What's going on, everybody? Whoop, let me shut that music off. Let's try that again. Wrong music. Let's go. Let me shut that music. Hello, how's it going? One of these days I'll get all this stream stuff figured out, right? Let's get some music going in the background. Let's do some upbeat stuff tonight. How's it going, Cold River? Good to see you in chat. 78 ounces a day. Sounds good to me. I'm gonna do some watermelon mint. I got some cranberry orange hint water going tonight. No soda, so I won't be burping into the microphone at everybody. Good to see you, Cold River. Glad that dragon made it to you in one piece. Several others got back to me and said the dragons made it to their new homes. The big one that Altran won, I goofed up the address. So I have to try and intercept it with USPS tomorrow before they ship it from California back to here to Colorado. The worst case scenario, they'll ship it back to Colorado and I'll ship it back to California. So sorry, Altran. That's on me. If you're watching on YouTube later on, hello. Like and subscribe, do all that stuff. I'm bad at marketing, so you need to help me. Please tell your friends about my channel. I'm Ian Douglas. I wrote this whole website, techinterview.guide. I've got a whole bunch of free resources on there about resume preparation, job preparation, interview prep, how to answer behavioral questions, technical questions, all that good stuff. It's all free. It's all for free. If you're watching on Twitch, give me a follow. If you are on YouTube and you want to come follow me on Twitch, you can. I live stream twice a week on Sundays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Mountain, which is 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And always happy to interact with folks in chat. So Cold River says, I didn't really know what to expect, but it's cool looking. I told you, right? They're way, like, the camera cannot do them justice with the filaments and so on that I used. I got some really cool filament in. Let me go grab it real quick. I'll show you what I'm going to be printing them in next. One more. Be right back. Of course, as soon as I want the other filament, I can't find it. So this filament by Matter Hacker is called Quantum. It's kind of the latest craze. It is green on this side and like silver white on this side. And so when it prints, you get sort of different effects from the filament depending on which direction it prints. And this one is dark purple on one side and light pink on the other. And I've also got some really cool red, blue coming and a gold yellow coming. This one is the very last spool of filament I got from Alien 3D. I don't know if they're going out of business or if they were just selling everything they got. It looks white, but it's actually glow in the dark red. So I'm really excited about that. I've got glow in the dark blue and green. And the one I was just trying to find is actually a glow in the dark rainbow filament, which would be really cool. So for those of you that got the multicolored dragons, where it started like one color and then kind of went up and faded into another color and faded into another color. The glow-in-the-dark rainbow is going to look like that, but it's going to come out printed and it's going to look white. And then, but when it glows in the dark, it's going to have this gradient kind of color to it. And then, where did the other one go? I 3D printed a dragon in a marble filament, so it looks like stone, and it looks amazing. So yeah, I love nerding out on 3D printers and stuff. I got one right behind me. I got 3 on the workbench over here. I got one in my garage. I've tried giving it away to 2 different people. Neither one of them seemed that interested in taking it off my hands, but it's sitting in my garage. Anyway, welcome to the stream. Thanks for the reminder to hydrate. DG776 got the job. What? You start in January? Okay, you got to tell us all about this job. Congratulations. That's amazing. I love that. I'm hoping to find out Monday or Tuesday about my Amazon job. And you know what's funny? They didn't make me sign an NDA. So do I get to tell you everything about the Amazon interview? I think I'm going to tell you about the Amazon interview. It was actually a lot of fun. So they told me it was going to start at 10 a.m. and it was going to be 5 hours of interviews. And so I'm like, okay, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., no break? Like, what the heck? They're like, oh no, we'll take breaks. And I'm like, for how long? Like 5 minutes in between? Like that's barely enough time for me to run upstairs and go to the bathroom and come back downstairs. Much less, like eat lunch or something like that in between. Well, it turns out they spaced them all out throughout the day. So I did one for an hour. I had an hour off. I did two of them for an hour back to back, and then I had a half hour, and then I did one. Then I had a half hour, and then I did the last one. So it was broken up enough throughout the day. And I gotta tell you, folks, it was the most casual, relaxed, laid back behavioral interview process I have ever done in my career. Like, no lie. It was so smooth. The first two interviews on Friday, the one at 10 a.m. started, and literally the guy starts out and he's like, "Oh, hi, I'm so and so." I don't want to give out people's names because I don't want you like hounding them for interviews. But the first guy got on there and he's super chill and he's like, "Hey, just chill, just take a breath, just answer the questions as best you can. It's not about how quickly you answer. You don't have to answer like immediately after I answer the question. Like take a moment, think about it, just let me know." And I'm like, "Cool, all right." And we had a really, really good conversation. He told me at the end. Now, keep in mind, Amazon is not supposed to give feedback during these interviews because that's just their corporate policy. They don't give feedback. Well, the first interview, he goes, "I have a pretty good feeling about this interview." I'm like, "You're not supposed to say that." But they did. And so I was appreciative of that. And then the second one came on. Well, I had an hour break. So I just kind of chilled and I was like hanging out on Twitch with other people and hanging out on Slack and just on LinkedIn and just messaging people and just having a casual morning, drinking lots of hot tea because my throat was really raspy because y'all kept me on my stream for 3.5 hours on Thursday, which is amazing. I had a blast. Thanks for dropping by and had a raid. Chris Perillo raided my channel with like 30 people and they all hung around. They're like, "What's this interview prep thing all about?" And so we had like amazing chat. You can go check that on YouTube. And so I had an hour break and then I get into the next one. And the way that Amazon does these last behavioral interviews is the hiring manager will get three other people from their department to come and interview me, but they also get one other person from a completely different department to come in, and they're kind of the check and balance of, even if everyone on that team really likes me and really hires me, if this fifth person comes in and says, "Nah, they're not a good fit," then I probably don't get the job because their vote carries a lot of weight just against bias and so on. Just to make sure that everybody's like on board and everybody gets equal chance, which I really appreciate that they go to those lengths. Well, the second one comes in and they actually gave me the list of everybody ahead of time. And so I'm looking them up on LinkedIn and kind of reviewing their background and looking at their education, how long they've been there. And I'm writing up all kinds of notes for myself and what kinds of questions I want to ask them. Well, over the course of, leading up to Thursday and then Thursday night after the stream, I basically put together a whole bunch of other questions that I wanted to ask. And so I was kind of picking and choosing from those questions for each person based on their background. Well, the second one that I had to interview wasn't from the AWS training team. They were from a different department of AWS. And I'm like, is this what they call the bar raiser? Because that's what they call that person that kind of balances out their interview team. And the reason they call it the bar raiser is because they want to raise the bar with everybody they hire. They basically evaluate everybody like, is this candidate better than 50% of my existing team? If so, we absolutely want to hire them. If not, we'll kind of talk and collaborate. And their whole process is they interview you, they write up a ton of notes, and then they do a debrief. But before they do the debrief, they get to read everybody else's notes. And so all 5 people get to read everyone else's notes. And then they come to this debrief and they talk about all the notes and whether like everybody gives a pass, no pass. And then they come together as a team. And then the hiring manager and the bar raiser go and discuss like, do we hire the person? And then I find out if I get the job. So the second person comes in and I realized they're not an AWS trainer. I went and looked up everybody else. There was one person I couldn't find on LinkedIn. Everybody else was on LinkedIn and they were all like an AWS trainer, except for the second person. They were still part of AWS. And I'm like, is that going to be the bar raiser? Like, do I have to really put on you have to really impress that person apparently and like knock their socks off. Well, I looked them up. Folks, they were from Canada. And I'm like, "Hey, I saw you went to school from Canada. Are you in Canada?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm from Montreal." I'm like, "What? I grew up in the Northwest Territories." And we started talking about Canada and Canadian trees. And I'm like, "All right, cool." So we hit it off. We had a really good rapport to get started. And so it was just totally coincidental. But we had a really good chat. Like everybody was asking really good questions. they're like, and over the course of the day, you're not supposed to repeat the same story over and over. And they also don't want you to go too far back in your history, which is hard for a dinosaur like me. Cue the Jurassic Park music. It was really hard to like, how do I pull stories from my history? Well, the third interview came, and they were also an AWS trainer. That person asked me a question that kind of stumped me, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but they asked a behavioral question, and I'm like, I haven't got I told them, I'm like, I don't have a story that's exactly what you're looking for. I've got something that's kind of adjacent. You can tell me whether it fits or not, and I can like go into other detail. And so I gave them that as an answer. I know as an interviewer that that's not fantastic, but it's not the end of the world. Like having kind of an adjacent story is better than be like, nah, I don't have any experience with that and just like shut it down. So I was at least kind of able to answer that question. And then the fourth one came, and that was a person that I couldn't find on LinkedIn. And they came in and they're like, oh, yeah, I'm from the AWS training team. I'm like, oh, whew. All right. Well, that means that the second person was definitely the bar raiser, the Canadian. I'm like, maybe we'll see. And then the fifth one came, and it was two people. It was an AWS trainer and someone else who had just been hired as an AWS trainer who was shadowing that person to learn how to do their interviews. And so that second person in the fifth interview, they went off camera and they were just taking notes. And so because they weren't asking me questions, they weren't the bar raiser, and everybody else, like the other four, other than the Canadian person, the other four, they were all AWS training managers. So one of those four people could potentially be my hiring manager. And I got along really well with all of them. In that fifth interview, though, I hope I didn't drop the ball. They asked me one question, and and it's a typical behavioral question. What was the last piece of critical feedback that you got? How did you respond to it? And I'm like, oh, how honest do I get with this? So I gave them the truth. I like to be a person of integrity, and I gave them the truth. And I said, you know, right when I was getting ready to leave Turing, I got some critical feedback, and this is what happened. Well, Amazon looks for people that take initiative, that understand that leadership is about coming up with ideas and trying to innovate. And so I was trying to kind of spin my answer into these leadership principles about how at Turing, I really wanted to get into teaching much more deep, like computer science kinds of topics and architecture topics and things about security and things like that. Um, that that the school just didn't have space for, and that some of the other staff had actually labeled me as intimidating. And it got to the point where, as a team, we weren't communicating well. And so they went to management, and management had to come to me and said, we got to fix this. And so we were trying to plan out like, okay, well, what do I change about my duties? How can I change? Do I take a step back and, just see what happens? Or do I come up with workshops and whatever to help the other staff kind of level up a little bit? And so that's kind of what we determined, is that I was going to kind of level up other people and get them excited about teaching this other content. And then through that, though, it got me thinking, like, I really want to teach these other deeper kinds of architecture and principles and things like that. And so that's when I that actually finished my decision to leave the school. Part of my other decision was that it was going to stay remote forever, and I really wanted to get back in the classroom. And so that started my thinking a year ago, December. And then by April, this other stuff had come up. And so by May, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to find somewhere else that I can teach. And then I ended up going to Stream. That didn't work out, but it would have gotten into teaching these deeper kinds of things. But now this position at Amazon opened up, and now I'm going to get to teach, hopefully, like really deep architecture and scalability and all the stuff that I really wanted to be teaching in the first place. So I'm hoping that answer kind of spun okay, that it sounded like it kind of matched their leadership principles, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. DG776, we're still waiting for you to tell us in chat about this job. I know you don't start until January, but like, tell us about it. How did the interviews go? I mean, obviously they went well, but I'm always curious, like, how did the interview prep help? What kinds of questions did you get asked? I mean, if you signed an NDA, don't disclose anything you're not supposed to. But if you're allowed to talk about like what their process was, we'd all love to hear it. I love hearing what other companies do as far as their interview process and so on. So drop that stuff in chat. We'd love to see it. Hitakiri, good to see you in chat. Cold River says it's hard to repress good rapport when it's going on. Yeah, that's for sure. And I was like really happy, really excited, really chill. So the first two interviews, they both started with like, take a breath, relax and whatever. And everybody was really good during the day, like making sure when they connected, like, hey, did you get a break? Do you need a break? Do you want to go get some water? And I told them like, no, I'm actually sipping on some tea right now because my throat's a little sore. And they're like, oh, no problem, no problem. And just making sure that I had breaks throughout the day. Like everybody was really great. And the last couple of interviews, they're like, you know what, you've been through a lot today. Like we don't have to use the whole hour. Just to let you know, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and if you want, you can ask me questions, but you don't have to because you've been at this a long time. And I'm like, no, I want to ask questions. I'm like, oh, I got questions. They're like, okay. And I was asking them everything about like learning styles. How do you accommodate learning styles? Um, just all kinds of stuff about the team and how they kind of interact and how they work on the curriculum and how they interact with the other teams that actually develop the curriculum. Turns out the instructional team are more just the presenters of the content, where we're not immediately like hands-on building the content. We can go back and we can offer like perspectives and potential changes and whatever, and that team then gets to decide whether that makes it in. And so in that regard, we're a little bit like developer relations, where we're taking feedback from the customer, which is the people taking the course, and we get to give that feedback to the curriculum team to see whether or not they want to make changes to the curriculum, and then we get to kind of teach it how we want. Just overall fantastic. But those last like 2-3 interviews where they're like, we don't have to use the full hour, we end up using the full hour, just because it turned into conversation. And that's what an interview should be. I keep saying that on the stream all the time. An interview should be conversation, not interrogation. And that's exactly what this whole Amazon process turned into. And it was fantastic. Like by the end of it, my throat was raw and I was sounding super raspy. And I hope they don't hold that against me. Like this guy can't talk for a long time. But I used to do a lot of singing in high school and college. And I used to have these vocal warm-up cassette tapes. I doubt I still have them, but I bet they're online somewhere. I'm probably gonna have to do some sort of like vocal training to kind of get my voice back, because I haven't really been teaching full time since the spring, and didn't talk very much at all with stream. So been kind of out of practice talking for a long time, except for the stream here Thursday night. That was great. Anyway, so that was my interview on Friday. I think it went well. I think there were two of those questions that were I'm a little iffy, but the rest of the day went really good. And they said everybody was going to come in, they're going to ask you like 2 or 3 questions. Everybody asked me like 5 or 6. And they're like, tell me about a time when. And I'd go in and I'd describe, and they would kind of hit me with a couple of follow-up questions. And they're like, all right, cool. And they're like writing lots of notes. And yeah, I mean, they're like, well, I mean, we got some time. I can ask you more questions, or you can ask me questions if you want. And I'm like, I'm good either way if you want to keep going. And they're like, all right, well, let me go back through the questions and see what else I can ask. Like, it turned out into a really, really great sort of process. Trekitch, cool name. Welcome to the stream. Hello, I'm Ian. I built this whole website, techinterview.guide, here to help people get better at interviews. Still waiting to hear from DG776. Come on, tell us about the interview process. We really want to hear it. Cold River starts at the end of January. Okay, so you get a little bit of time off. Cool. Trekitch says in chat, I don't have a comp sci degree, but I was able to get a developer job. Good for you. High five. I'm just going to stop right there. You don't have to have a degree to get a job. Good for you. I'm happy that you found something. That's awesome. That's really, really great. And kudos to the company that hired you to recognize you don't have to have a computer science degree to get a developer job. So good for you. Reading on. I've been there for almost 5 years. I know I want to switch jobs eventually, but I deal with imposter syndrome due to not having a CS degree. At some point, your experience outweighs anything you would have learned with that CS degree. I've been doing this for 25 years. I don't have a CS degree. I still get imposter syndrome, but people have still been willing to hire me because of the experience that I've had and the experience that I build up and how I talk about during the resume and the application process and the first couple of interviews about what I do bring. So I don't focus on, oh yeah, I'm Ian, I've got these skills, but I don't have a computer science degree. Don't highlight the negative. Don't highlight things that you think might hold you back in that interview process. Just present to them, this is what I do bring. These are the experiences I have. This is the kind of work I've been doing. These are the projects I've been involved in. This is how I've made an impact. and this is how I'm going to help your team. That's all you need to talk about. Let them figure it out from there. If they're going to interview you, they're going to look at your resume. They're going to look at your history and go, no degree, but 5 years of experience outweighs a lot when it comes to the kind of experience that you've done. So it will depend a little bit on the industry that you're in. It will depend a little bit on like over that 5 years, have you shown progression in your skill? Because they want to know, like, do you have 5 years of experience or do you have 1 year of experience 5 times? Like, did you learn a lot in that first year and then it was just put on repeat for 4 more years? Or have you continued to grow? Have your responsibilities grown? Have your technical skills grown? Like, what other kinds of tech stacks have you gotten to work with? What kinds of projects did you work on? How did you sort of increase your skill over those 5 years? That's what you really need to present during those interviews. But yeah, I deal with imposter syndrome all the time. Even on Friday, I was talking to these folks and I'm like, yeah, I did this and I did this and I did this. And I like, I've got this really long Google Doc of like all these stories that I wanted to be able to tell, and putting all that together. And you kind of take a step back and go, dang, I've done a lot in my career. Like, when you actually sit down and document just how many things you've been a part of, like over those years, it adds up. It really adds up. And I don't say that in any braggy, boastful kind of way. Like, I'm proud of the things I've done. But you take a step back and you're like, I've been here a hot minute and I've actually had a lot of impact. You know, whether it was like really visible to the end customer or just I made something really fast on the back end and it was never tangibly visible to the customer other than like they click a button and it happened right away versus having to wait a couple of seconds. It does make a big deal. And you end up being involved in just so much. But I empathize with where you're coming from. I don't have a degree. I get imposter syndrome too. Just go apply for the job and just pitch them on what you do bring to the job. Trekich says, thanks. The main reason I'm trying to switch is because the job has gotten stagnant and I really don't enjoy it anymore. Started learning Python last week. Cool. I love Python. It's my number 1 language. And interviewing in Python is actually kind of a common trend that I'm seeing lately because it's such a concise, high-level language. You can do a lot in Python, and it makes the tech challenges in interviews, in my opinion, a lot easier to get through. And so I think that there's a lot of value in learning Python and using that for the interview process, not just the job, but even if it's just the interview, it can be worth it as a language. I mean, any high-level language, whether it's C#, JavaScript, Ruby, Python, like any of the high-level languages are going to be good for interviewing, as long as you know it decently well, that you can kind of work with your data structures that are built into the language, and you know enough about like the fundamentals of, you know, doing loops and, you know, things like that. But if you can get into like the Python, like the cool Python stuff, like list comprehensions and decorators and things like that, that can really like show off a lot of skill too during those interviews. X90, good to see you in chat. Hello. See X, I haven't been able to track your package because you're up north. And I haven't seen any updated tracking. I don't even know if it's crossed the border yet, but your dragon will make it there eventually, provided I got your address right. Turns out the big dragon that I sent to Altran, that Altran won the little one as well as the big one. I goofed up on the mailing address thing that I printed out and put on the box. I forgot a number on the house number of the address, and I'm like, it was a 4-digit number, and I only put down 3 of them. I'm like, I'm an idiot. So I got to see if I can call USPS like first thing tomorrow and see if they can intercept it before they auto ship it back to Colorado, and see if they can just update it and like try to redeliver it. So if not, it'll come back to Colorado. I'll correct it and pay for the shipping again. No big deal. But they're making them. They are making it. I've had word back from like Ida Dev and It's Me CSV, and Trash Dev. They've all gotten their dragons and they're like, these things look amazing. Cold River got theirs. So yeah, I was pretty excited about shipping them out. I've got 2 more of them on my desk here. I've got 1 more that actually has to get sent out to Rate of Null. Just last week was kind of a blitz with the Amazon interviews, and then I needed Saturday to recover, so I just kind of hung out Saturday, and I'm like, oh shoot, I forgot to get to the post office and mail Creative Null their dragon. But 2 of the other ones are here in the Denver region, so I'm trying to connect with them so I can actually like meet up with them for lunch or coffee or something this week since I am unemployed, and see if I can just like hand them the dragon. So that'll be fun, getting to meet some users off of Twitch. X, how did the interview go? You're gonna have to watch like the first half hour of the stream because I've just been blabbling on and on and on and on about how awesome of an experience it was. I think it went okay. I really won't know for a little while. Hey, thanks for the follow. Sajked? Not sure how to pronounce that, but welcome. Welcome to the stream. I'm Ian. I built this website, techinterview.guide. I need to point this way. There we go. Techinterview.guide is the website. It's all free material. Help yourself to it. I've got a daily email series that you can subscribe to. I'm still working on those emails. I got a lot of content to kind of go through because I really want to do a good job on those emails and get those out. So I think, over the holidays, if I don't get the Amazon job, I'm going to take the holidays off and start the job hunt again in January, I think. Although I've got a handful of other jobs that I've already started applying to at like Twitter, Square/Block, Shopify. I've got one application at Microsoft that I haven't heard yet. Usually they're pretty quick on a turnaround at Microsoft, but I don't know whether I'm still in the running for that one. There are a handful of other like developer relations jobs I'm looking at, and then a handful of like just senior dev, like principal dev kind of roles at smaller companies. But I'm really hoping to get into a big company. I'm kind of at a point now where it's like, I just want to contribute to an existing team and just do what I do best and just, do coaching and mentoring and stuff like that. So that would be my ideal role, but we'll see how Amazon plays out. If I get the job, I'm going to take it. If I don't get the job, like I said, I'm going to take the holidays off. I'm probably just going to keep working on the email content. But anyhow, I forgot to save this file to update what's on the screen because we are not doing resume reviews tonight. Although, you know what? I did get a resume to do a review. But off the top of my head, I can't remember I think it was a private review, so I might hold off on that one. But yeah, X90, the interview I think went really well. It was super relaxed, super chill. I had a really great time with it. Really, really good conversation with everybody on their team. Trek Itch, no, you can send me in a resume anytime. Yeah, send it in for review anytime on this page. And you can just email me a PDF. I'll pull it up in a browser and I'll do a review. If you want to, Trek Itch, let me know if you're going to send one like now, and I'll do one live on the stream tonight. Otherwise, I'm just hanging out. I didn't really have an agenda or a plan for tonight, so I figured I'd just interact with chat for a change. But if you send me a resume and you want me to review it tonight, let me know in chat, and I'll do it tonight. Okay. Sending right now. Cool. This watermelon mint, by the way, I'm not sponsored in any way by Hint Water. I'm a big fan, though. Their watermelon mint is fantastic if you ever get a chance to try it out. It's really, really good. Heartbender in the house. How's it going, Heartbender? Still waiting for DG to tell us in chat about this job they got. DG, don't leave us hanging. You can't just drop in chat and say, hey, by the way, I got a job. Thanks for the interview prep, and then leave. Come on. Tell us about this job. What else? I got a package in the mail today. I got a package in the mail. You've all heard me tell the story on the stream of me dropping 150 million rows of production data, right? You remember that story? Well, I got to tell that story to Amazon, and they're like, "What was?" Oh, that was the question where it was like, they asked a question about like, tell me about a time that the team made a decision and it had like a really, really bad failure. Like, what did you do? And I'm like, well, I got a story that's kind of related, but it's all on me. It wasn't really the team. And they're like, all right, well, tell us about it. And I'm like, well, I dropped I put like 50 million rows of test data in the staging database. And then someone else wanted to run some analytics thing on it just to benchmark their analytics thing. And then told me to go in and I could clean out the staging database. So I went in and I'm like, this is taking a really long time to delete. And so I canceled and realized I was on a production system and I had deleted like 150 million rows of production data. So I've told that story a bunch of times. Well, it turns out the lady that saved my butt, her name is Sylvia. And Sylvia, I've got like, if you're ever watching this, like, thank you. You're amazing. Like at what you do. I'm so happy I got to work with you at SendGrid. Well, guess what? Sylvia wrote a book with someone else, somebody named Jeremy Tinley. And sorry, I don't know Jeremy. But Sylvia wrote a book, High Performance MySQL. And so I bought a copy of the book, and I'm going to read it. It just came in today. You just saw me open the package, and I'm really excited to read through this. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked. And if I ever run into Sylvia, I want to get her to autograph this for me. Um, and I said the same thing when I had Dan Moore on the stream, because Dan wrote a book. Oh, I put it back on my bookshelf already. Letters to a New Developer. And I'm like, Dan, if I ever run into you, I want you to autograph my book. I saw him literally a week later at RubyConf, and he's like, "Did you bring the book? I was going to sign it." I'm like, "Oh, I totally forgot." I was just excited to get out and see people in person. But anyway, yeah. So Trick Itch, if you're sending me that resume, make sure you anonymize like your name and contact info. Unless you've sent it over already, I'll keep an eye out for it. But yeah, try to anonymize your details, just because I don't want to like dox anybody with your real contact info and stuff. Let's see. Oh, so I got a different resume to review. Let me take a quick peek at it here. It is anonymized. So yeah, let me pull that one up as well while we wait for Trekitch. I'll just do like a couple of quick resume reviews tonight. If you ever have questions, please drop them in chat. I'm here to help people out. I'm just gonna do a couple of quick resume reviews, and then yeah, we'll just hang out and chat and see if DG776 is gonna tell us about this job or not. X90, what's going on in your world this week? Root user, good to see you in chat. Hello. Arbender, what's going on in your life this week? Anybody else job hunting? Oh, Zooey 222 that's normally in chat. They've got a really big Cold River. Thanks for the subscription. I appreciate that. Thank you. Very much appreciate the subscription. Zooey222 has a really big interview at Target on Tuesday. Super nervous. Hung out on LinkedIn with them today and was just trying to give them some encouragement. I found a bunch of stuff on Instagram that I kind of watch from time to time just to, as encouragement. And we had a really good chat today. And one of the things that they brought up, and I actually tweeted about this a couple hours ago, and they said, well, I was reading up this list of like, oh, front end developers should know the following things. And I was like reading through and realized I don't know half of this stuff. And so I'm like trying to go learn and cram. And I'm like, dude, stop learning. Review what you do know. Don't try and cram your head full of new stuff because you only had today and tomorrow. And I'm like, you need a rest Monday night so that you get up fresh Tuesday and you can crush this interview. And so I told Zooey, do not try to learn anything new. But it got me thinking about these lists that you see on GitHub, and I think that they're good lists. Like I'm not criticizing them at all. But on these lists, it's like, oh, you should know the following things in order to be a front end dev or a back end dev or a full stack dev. And basically, what I tweeted today was like, you can use that as kind of like a midterm, long term goal to go learn all those things. But I don't know, sometimes those lists feel a little bit like gatekeeping of like, oh, you're not a front end dev unless you know all this following stuff. And I think for newcomers to the industry, I think it can be hurtful and really sort of impose that imposter syndrome on them or I think I said it induces imposter syndrome in newcomers to the industry because they see these lists and they're like, oh crap, I'm nowhere near qualified to go get a job. It's like, no, you know what? You're qualified to go get a job. It's like eventually, like what they should do is they should rename these lists like eventually as a front end dev, you're going to know all the following things. But the way that they're kind of pitched is like you have to know these things in order to be a front end dev. And I think it's going to keep a lot of people out of the industry, unfortunately. And a couple of friends of mine up in the Seattle area, Jessica and Brandon West, both commented. They're like, maybe we should label them like this is what you need to know in the first couple of years, and then this is what you can learn like later on. I'm like, that would be much better. Like, tell people like, hey, if you're new to the industry and you want to be a front end dev or a back end dev or a full stack dev, these are the things you're going to need just to get any kind of job. And then from there, like, here's a bunch of extra stuff that you can go learn. But otherwise, like, I don't know. Sometimes I look at those lists and I'm like, I don't know half of this stuff. I still consider myself a dev. Like, I'm still a back end dev, but because I don't know like Apache Spark or something, like, I'm not considered a dev. Like, I don't know. Anyway, root user asks, have I ever heard of Reviture? It rings a bell. makes me think of like one of those companies that like offer you an apprenticeship, but if you leave before 2 years is over, you have to pay them back a bunch of money. But I'm not sure if that's the right place. And root user also redeemed some channel points for a silly rapid fire question. Go ahead and ask root user. I love those. If not, I can go look some up. X says I found those lists pretty subjective at times. Yeah, and they're subjective because they're not all going to be the same kind of thing. Like, do you really have to go learn like 50 different technologies just to call yourself a front end dev? No, I don't think so. I don't think you do. I don't think it has to be that complicated. I think a lot of people can get into the industry knowing a lot less than what those lists present. But I mean, they're still good lists. Like I said, like don't be too critical of them. Like don't get on their list and be like, Ian said blah, because A, they don't know who I am, but B, it's not helping community at all to say that kind of stuff either. But I think that could be presented a little bit more as like, as a beginner, these are things that you really do need to know in order to go get a job. Like you need to be able to answer questions about the following things in order to get a job. And then from there, like mid-range, learn these things, and then senior range, learn these things or something like that. All right, Trackitch sent the resume over, cool. Root user asks, do years of experience equate to knowledge known or actual years in a field? It's not a stupid question at all. Never worry about questions on my chat sounding silly or stupid. Totally okay to ask these kinds of questions. Years of experience don't necessarily equate to knowledge. I still vividly remember, I'm pretty sure was it SendGrid or Simple Energy at the time? I got a resume from someone who was fairly new in the industry. They'd only been working for maybe 2 or 3 years. And they sent me a resume, I'm pretty sure it was at Simple Energy. And they claimed to know like 30 different programming languages, like 1 or 2 frameworks for each of them, like just tons of libraries and tons of databases. And I'm looking over this resume going, okay, either this person's got like 50 years of experience or they're completely lying. And by the time I went through page after page and got to the education, I realized they'd only been out of school for like 2 years. And I'm like, there's no way that you have an efficiency level knowledge of all the stuff that you've put on this resume. So I didn't even call them. I'm like, this thing's garbage. Like I don't trust anything on this resume at all. And I put it to the side and I never called them. And so no, years of experience don't equate knowledge or vice versa. People can claim to know a lot of things, but actually having used them, built a project in it of size, of worth, and not just like, oh, I did every to-do list tutorial out there on the internet. It's like, that doesn't tell you anything except how to be an expert at building a to-do list. But like, if you're going to really knuckle down on a particular language or framework, you're going to make multiple projects in that thing and show me a depth of knowledge in that language. So basically, this person had a gigantic breadth of knowledge, and their depth of knowledge is like this big. And it's like, that's not worth it to any employer whatsoever. You have to have depth of knowledge in something. And so build a lot of projects in like 1 or 2 technologies instead. So going back to root users question, years of experience don't equate to knowledge. I've also seen people stagnant in their career where they've been doing the same thing year after year after year after year and never growing. Where I saw this the most was when WordPress was really popular. Well, I mean, it's still decently popular, but back when PHP was a really popular language, a lot of people were getting into WordPress development, and people are like, I'm a WordPress developer, but that's the only platform they knew, and that's the only thing that they really got involved in. And so they knew WordPress really well, but they didn't go learn anything else. Well, because WordPress is such a specialized content management system, a lot of the things that you learn about WordPress and how like all the internal pieces communicate, you don't really apply that to other things. And so, yeah, you can go download someone's plugin and like plug that in and like maybe customize it a little bit, but you're not like doing a ton of work yourself on like, oh, I implemented my own like plugin of, sending emails or doing some e-commerce or something like that, because those plugins exist. You want to use SendGrid or MailChimp on WordPress, there's a plugin for that. You want to use Square or PayPal on your WordPress thing, there's a plugin for that. Like, you don't have to go invent those things. And so people weren't growing, but they're like, I've been a WordPress developer for 5 years. It's like, yeah, so you've got like 6 months of experience. Like, it doesn't equate The years don't equate to experience, and the experience don't equate to years. So like people that claim a lot of experience, in a short amount of time, uh, they absolutely don't equate. So when I look over a resume, I'm looking for growth. And I talked on Thursday about like a webinar that I sat in on, and I'm pretty sure it was a couple of recruiters from Microsoft, and they were basically saying like on a resume, you need to show, not tell, or tell, not show. Show, not tell. Apologies, I got that mixed up. I had it on a notebook here somewhere, but my desk is like buried and stuff right now. And they were basically saying you need to show me a progression of skill and not just like claim that you have progression in skill. Like tell me what that progression was. I did this, then I did this, then I did this. Like I want to like actually see that. And not just like, oh, I've been working there for 5 years and I've been doing amazing stuff. It's like, well, show me what you've been doing. And so that's going to be a big part of your interview process there too. Cool. So Trek Hitch, I'll get to your resume in just a sec. And yes, that's the company. So I would run, not walk away from Reviture. I typically don't name those kinds of companies on my stream, but I will call them out by name. It is garbage. It's not worth it. Yeah, I would absolutely walk away from those. You took the offer, but the company I was contracted with purchased your Reviture contract. Wow, that was really nice of them. That's cool that company did that. I know companies that won't do that kind of stuff, and like your debt is your debt. But yeah, you can totally negotiate for that kind of stuff. You can say like, hey, I'll come join your company, but if I leave this thing, like I'm going to have this debt, like could you pay that, or could I get a signing bonus so I can pay it off? Some companies will be cool with that, but Reviture, they charge a lot of money from what I understand. It was like 30K or 40K or something if you leave early. Does that sound right? Something in my mind is like somewhere in the 30 to 40K range. Like that's garbage. Like, yeah, you get 2 years of experience, but I mean, from what I'd heard, like they really underpay. And if you leave early, they like dangle this debt over you to kind of keep you there at a really low pay when you could go get another job and make even more money. Trekitch says, yeah, that's what they told me. Yeah. So it's not worth it. Those kinds of companies are not worth it. You should not have to pay to get experience. I know that the job hunt is hard. I'm going through it myself, and I know especially that first job is really hard. I've been working with people for 8 years now, trying to get that first job in tech, and it is hard, and it can take months and months and months. You got to persevere at it. Someone else said so I saw a tweet like first thing this morning when I got up. I saw someone on Twitter, and they were commenting about, if you're looking for someone to mentor, like just ask. And so I kind of tweeted the same thing. I'm like, there are so many people out here in the community that want to help you. If you want mentorship, just find somebody you trust or ask some friends for a recommendation, and then just ask that person if they'll mentor you. Well, within like 2 minutes, I had a direct message on Twitter going, will you mentor me? I'm like, yeah. I had like an hour-long conversation with someone who's still in school. They're thinking about an internship. And so we had this really long conversation. And I'm like, okay, what are you interested in? They're like, I want to do web development. I'm like, what kind of web development? They said, I want to do front end. I'm like, okay. And what do you want to build? They're like, websites. I'm like, tell me more. Like, what kind of industries? What kind of companies? Like, if someone, were to offer you a paycheck and just pay all of your expenses or bills for 2 years, what would you want to be building? And then they started coming, well, I would work on this and I would work on this and I'd work on this. I'm like, great. Go find those companies that do those things. Those are the companies where you want to like apply for an internship. So they're primarily looking for intern roles. And so the advice I was giving them on Twitter was go find those companies and see if they have internships. And if not, find out what you do need to know. Like see if that company has a job description open. Find out what kind of skill they want. Find out what kind of skill you have, and then make a plan to get there. So if they need like a certain kind of language or framework and you don't have any of that now, could you learn that in the meantime to go get that job later? Or is there an internship that you can kind of use as a stepping stone to get there? Right. And so, you've got that company now as your goal. What do you need to learn to get to that goal? And can you find an internship in the meantime that just teaches you that thing? And so they they started describing like one of the things that they were thinking about was some kind of healthcare related thing. I don't want to give too much detail away, but they had a very specific healthcare model in mind that they really wanted to go work for. And so I suggested, okay, well, in order to get a job like that, you might have to learn something like data privacy. So can you find an internship where you're just going to learn about data privacy, nothing else? Just focus on data privacy, information security, like InfoSec. Just learn how to keep data private. And that's it. Because when you go to that internship and they say, why do you want an internship here? Now you can say, my long-term goal is this. I need to learn data privacy in order to get to that goal. Your company does data privacy, and so I can apply what I know. I'm bringing that experience to the team, but I'm an intern. I've got a lot to learn, but this is going to help me get to where I want to be in the future. Companies are like, wow, you got a plan? Like most people that go for an internship, they're like, I just want a cool internship on my resume. But they don't think about the long-term goal of like, I'm using this as a tool to get to that goal. I think that'll actually impress a lot of companies. And so I kind of gave them some homework and I said, okay, that was one idea. Go think of 2 more ideas of other kinds of companies and then figure out what skills do they need? What do you know now? Can you find an internship learning some of those skills to get there eventually? And then they were asking about how do I do better in data structures and algorithms? And so I kind of pointed them to my YouTube channel where I've got some videos about shortcutting the leak code grind and sort of reverse engineering the leak code grind to learn the strategies. Because I've basically narrowed down, like just talking with a lot of people lately, there are 5 algorithms that will really, that have kind of risen to the surface as being like the most popular algorithms that you're going to face in tech challenges. Depth first search, breadth first search, dynamic programming, backtracking, and heap problems. Those are the top 5 based on people that I've been talking to for the last several months. Those are the top 5 interviews to kind of like, or the top 5 algorithms to kind of close out 2021 into 2022. Those are your top 5. That doesn't mean like all the rest of them are never going to get asked, but those are the top ones that you're likely to get asked during an interview. Now, if you're new in the industry, you're going to be asked about things like manipulating data structures, like how do you transfer things from one data structure to another, or how do you optimize like a binary tree or something. So any kind of traversal algorithm is going to be useful. And then just understanding what are the data structures that are already built into your language, and then what are like 1 or 2 other like really common data structures, and then how do you sort of traverse those and manipulate those. And that would be like binary trees and maybe like very simple graphs. But if you're new in the industry, like unless you've got a math background or you're going for like a FANG company, you're probably not going to get asked about like weighted graphs and like A-star and Dijkstra's and stuff like that. Those are pretty advanced algorithms that I wouldn't expect a new grad to know unless unless they really convince me on the resume and during the technical screen that they've studied that kind of stuff. Then I might actually ask them just to prove that they've done it. But otherwise, like I'm not going to expect an entry-level dev to know that deep of level of stuff. Anyway, so that was the advice I gave to 2 mentees today. So Zooey, just about like don't learn anything new. Your interview's on Tuesday. Don't cram anything new into your brain. Just review what you already know and then get a really good rest Monday night and hydrate so that you're ready for Tuesday. So Zooey, if you're watching this later on, we're rooting for you. And I sincerely hope that it goes great for you at Twitter. But if you drop by the chat, let us know how you're doing. But they're probably heads down reviewing and stuff. Cold River says your resume might be in my queue as well. Cool. I'm going to go have a look right now. Trackage says, I'm just scared to leave my job. Or leave your first job. Yeah. It can be. My first job actually wasn't too hard to quit. I was doing tech support. They moved me into a pre-sales engineering role, which I really liked. I wanted to stay there because it was a lot of like direct customer interaction and custom coding and working with the sales team. And I really, really liked doing that. But they wanted to move me back into regular tech support and I didn't want to do that anymore. And they're like, well, you signed up for a 2-year commitment. And I'm like, well, I'm signing my resignation letter. And then they actually, they did an exit interview and they actually called me a waste of resources. I'm like, this is exactly why I don't want to work here. And I got a job doing firmware development. I got into development from there. So anyway, Root user says, yeah, that was the exact amount. So that's going back to the Reviture thing. They want like 30, 40K. They underpay people. They overcharge if you leave. Yeah. I took it because it's hard to find a job after college. I was impatient. And honestly, those kinds of companies, they prey on people like that. Like that's their business model. So we're going to go find those really desperate people, and then we're going to kind of like keep them here for low pay and dangle this debt over their head if they don't stick around. So, I do know everyone went in with me was purchased out as well. Okay, good for them. Thanks for your input. Yeah, it helped me a lot. Good. Hitakiri says, would you consider myself a perfectionist? Hesitant to step forward because you're unsure of the quality? Yes. And I think that hits a lot of people. I was actually watching something else on Instagram. This lady that I follow on Instagram, she was talking about how sometimes we don't want to get started on something and it turns into procrastination. We don't get started because we're a perfectionist and we're worried that it's not going to turn out perfect, and so we don't even want to start. And that can also happen in development too. Like, oh, there's this thing I want to go learn, but there's so much to do, and like, oh, I'm not going to bother right now. I'm going to do it later. It's like just journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? Just start learning, just start doing it, iterate on it. Learn a thing, get some feedback, iterate on it. It's that whole agile process. After so much rejection, kind of become a bit hesitant to really put applications back out. I feel that. I lost out on 2 opportunities I really wanted last week. One was my goof, and one was just the company's going through something. They haven't given me a ton of feedback. I've got someone else that works kind of higher up, and they give me, I think, a little bit of insight, but they're not part of that actual team, so I don't really know what's going on. Henelek, good to see you. Thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome to the stream. So yeah, I missed out on those 2 jobs. I also got rejected from a few others. I walked away from several just because of, beliefs and reasons. Like, I don't want to work on an engineering team that's all male. That's just something that I really, really hold to. And I walked away from 3 different companies because of that. 3 a.m. where you are, almost 4 a.m. Dang, thanks for hanging out at 4 a.m. If you're a perfectionist, it's hard to work in legacy code sometimes. Yeah. Anyway, let's get to some resume reviews. I had a couple of folks that wanted resume reviews, so let me pull these up. All right, Trekich, I got yours. Download that. All right, let me get my download folder. Downloads. Pull these up in a browser here, and then we will. Oops, I only pulled one of them in. With the other one. Cool. And Cold River, you mentioned that you were sending me one, or you already sent me one. You put off Turing or something like it for years because of that paralysis. Yeah, I mean, you gotta start somewhere. And whether it's a code school or something else, like, it's a really, really good step to take. Hanalex says, I heard people not to talk about heard people say, like, not to talk about their weakness during a job interview because people talk about their weakness a lot, honestly. Yeah. It's easy to bring up weakness in an interview, especially when they ask, like, what's your greatest weakness? Sometimes you end up being too honest, and sometimes people are like, oh, just, make it sound like it's a positive thing. It really comes down to, like, are you self-aware that you had a problem? How did you become aware of it? What did you do to fix it? And then how are you holding yourself accountable to not repeat it? That's really the thing there. And so when I was kind of answering that question at Amazon about, like, what was the failure, and I talked about dumping all that production data, I'm like, I actually advocated for the team to, like, stop, giving us production access to databases, and how a bunch of the engineering team were kind of up in arms and are like, oh, that was a dumb thing to do. I wanted that access. It's like, yeah, but I had that access and I wiped out a bunch of customer data. Like, let's not have that access. So yeah. Hiragiri says, I don't shy away from a challenge in learning, but attempting to snipe desired jobs gets shot down. Everything is perception, and a closed door usually could be a space or time that wasn't meant to be. I have a local friend that they were going through a pretty lengthy job hunt, and their attitude about it was just like, yeah, it's just not the right time. My time's coming, but it's not the right time yet. Cold River sent it the day or day before. Let me grab a look. Cold River, can you whisper me on Twitch and let me know your like email address that you might have emailed that from, just so I can find it a little faster. Cool. And as always, if you want to ask me a question, you can also whisper me on Twitch, or if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you can ask me on LinkedIn too. Just DM me a message or DM me on Twitter. I've got my DMs always open on Twitter, and happy to help people out there. And I won't ask your question publicly. Like I won't say like, oh, Trash Dev asked this question. What's up, Trash Dev? Good to see you. So I did get a private question, and I'm going to ask that while I look at Cold River's Whisper. Thanks for sending that. Cool. Thanks. I will look for that in just a sec. So this person sent me a message, said, I'm coming up on my 1 year mark in February. My job is basically trying to give me a promotion to be an architect. I've been doing well and been helping people a lot. I'm not sure I'm ready to be an architect. What are your thoughts? An architect role kind of gets you out of like day-to-day development, and it's really about, I like to think of it as like Lego pieces. Like, what's your vision to like build something out of Lego? And then what are each of those pieces? And are those pieces tools that your team already has, or can you say like, hey, I need you to go build me a piece that looks exactly like this? So think of it like me with a 3D printer, and you say, hey, Ian, I want to build this model out of Lego. I don't have a piece that looks exactly like this. Can you go make that for me? That's really an architect's role within a company, is you're now going to kind of direct teams a little bit, but you're basically going to be making recommendations about this is kind of the tooling that I need, or this is a library that I need, or I need an API that does such and such. Go build that for me and bring it back so that we can like build this bigger thing. That's really what an architect role is to me, is planning out like what are all these pieces and how are they going to fit together? How are they going to communicate together? And be really effective. And so you're gonna have like sort of high level vision and sort of big picture, and then you need to really sell the team on like, get on board. You got to rally the troops, and you got to like get everybody behind you to get them really excited about what it is you've got in mind to go build, so that they want to go build those things. There was a quote I remember years ago and I'm not gonna say the quote correctly, but it was something along the line of, if you want to build a boat, you don't find people and train them how to build a boat. You give them a love and a desire to explore the open sea, something along those lines. Because if the rest of the team is really passionate about going where you want to go, they're going to figure out a way to get there. And so it's not about giving them the nitty gritty detail of like, I need you to go build this exact thing. You just say, I need something that can send email. Like, build me an API that can go send an email. I don't care how it sends email or what service you use, but I need an API that's got this kind of interface. And if I send this kind of message, it's going to send an email to somebody. Go build me that, bring it back. And then this team over here, I need a web app with a CRUD interface, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to like glue all these things together. And so as an architect, you're a lot less involved in the actual code. Sometimes you can be, depending on the size of the company. But typically, like, the higher you get as like staff engineer, principal engineer, architect level roles, you're kind of getting out of the code a little bit, and you're more a vision and idea kind of person. And then like really telling the teams like, okay, I need this, I need this, I need this, go execute. So yeah, that would be my answer to my thoughts on being an architect. It's actually a really fun role. I did that at SendGrid, but I was also really hands-on on a lot of things. But when I wasn't involved in the code and I was waiting for teams to come back, I would actually go work on like R&D projects with one of the founders, or I worked with like our account management team to like build up some internal tools. There are other things that you can get involved in if you still want to stay technically sharp, or you can help the teams build up the things that you had kind of in mind. But keep in mind that if you're kind of that visionary and you've got those ideas and you're also in the code, that you're kind of like muddying the waters a little bit about being objective about how things get built. And so it can imply a lot of your bias on what you wanted built versus giving them the autonomy to just go build it any way they want to. So a couple of things to keep in mind there as an architect, in my opinion. RC Maniac, hello, good to see you in chat. Missed if I mentioned how was my interview. Interview went good. You're gonna have to listen to like the first half hour. I was like talking on and on and on about Amazon and how it was actually a really wonderful experience. I really hope I get the job. I think it went well. I think it went okay. I'm not gonna know for a couple of days, so I'm not gonna beat myself up either way. There's a quote that I heard from Matthew McConaughey, of all people, right? He said, "Don't do anything half-assed. Like, give it everything you got, because then whether you get it or whether you don't get it, you never have to sit back and think like, oh, what if I tried harder?" And that kind of sat with me for a couple of days. I'm like, oh, dang. Like, sometimes these people like pull these really philosophical things out of nowhere that drop on you. Kevin Hart is another one where I've listened to a lot of Kevin Hart stuff. And some of his stuff is actually quite motivational too. Like, as weird as he is, as quirky as he is, he's actually got some pretty good motivational stuff as well. And he's also got an autobiography book that I listen to, an audiobook. And it's actually got some really good stuff in there. So yeah, like, just don't do it half-assed. Give it everything you got, and then you never have to worry about whether you could have tried harder. So yeah, cool. Let's get to those resume reviews. I'm gonna go try to find Cold River. Sure, it's in here somewhere. There it is. Oh yeah, that was the other one that I pulled up already. All right, cool. So let me switch over to that screen. And let me pull up that browser. Cool. All right, so this is the first one I'm going to look at, and I will zoom in a little bit on it. There we go. And I'm going to hydrate. Old River says, tech interview guide really helped me reframe the interview, especially the final panel interview for the job I was eventually offered. Great. Not as adversarial. That's good. Really helped me to go in clear-headed, more relaxed. Glad to hear that, Cold River. It's good to hear. And thanks for everyone else who was kind of bringing other people up to speed on my Amazon interview. I appreciate that. Root user says, this kind of touch base back on a previous question. Let's say a position requires 5 to 6 years. You only have 1 year experience, but all the required tools you're proficient with, a lot of the knowledge. Depends why they want 5 to 6 years of experience. Like, do they want 5 or 6 years in that exact tool, or do they just want someone that's got a lot of like rounded experience and they happen to know that tool? So I might get some clarification if you can do some networking with people at the company. See if you can get some clarification on which one they prefer. Goku00, thanks for the follow. Appreciate that. Welcome to the stream, as well as Hidden. You kind of snuck in there too, so hello, Hidden. Yeah, so I'm Ian Douglas. I built this website, techinterview.guide, just here helping people out, and we're going to do just a couple of quick resume reviews here. So Anon is a backend web developer in pursuit of full-time employment. I would take this off. You were just a backend developer. Of course you're pursuing employment. You're sending them a resume, so it doesn't need to be on the resume. You can take that off. Email, all this. Fake address, I would typically me personally, I hear people give other advice. Me personally, I say don't ever put your location on a resume. It can subject you to geographic bias. But if you're looking for a job in a particular area and you put that area on your resume, like, oh yeah, I totally live in Chicago, and they call you up and they're like, we want to give you a job. You're like, cool. Can you help me move to Chicago? At that point, you can negotiate some moving expenses. But if you say I'm in California and the job's in Chicago, then they're like, do we really want to pay to move this person? Like, we really want them to come to the office eventually someday, maybe. But if you're remote, it can help them know where you are. So last week when I was doing the resume reviews, I was suggesting, like, just put your time zone on there. If you're applying for a remote job, just say what time zone you're in. You don't have to specify where you live. As long as you know it's a remote job. I would also get a LinkedIn link on here if you can. That'll help them see, like, maybe a lot more about your background and so on for things that aren't going to fit on the page. As far as skills, you say Ruby, and then you say Ruby on Rails. I would take the Ruby on off, because I can't write Python on Rails. I can't write JavaScript on Rails. You can just say Ruby and then Rails. MVC, Yeah, that's kind of a skill. SQL's a skill. Postgres is capital SQL, so make sure you're spelling things out properly. Heroku, continuous integration, TDD, API exposure and consumption. Okay, good. And OP, I'd probably take OP off. That one's pretty expected nowadays. So as far as like linking these things up together, I would typically do like languages and then frameworks and then tools. Um, and you've kind of done that here. Although SQL is kind of a language. TDD is more of like a way that you develop. You might want to list out like, was it RSpec or Minitest if you did Rails. I would actually mention like the actual libraries that you used. But having test-driven development on there is fine. And I like that you spelled it out and not just say TDD because we saw from other people that sometimes recruiters don't understand what those acronyms mean. Hidden says, as an engineer who reviews resumes to bring people onto my team, don't include what you did 15 years ago. I just want to see recent work. Yeah. Unless that work that you did, even 15 years ago, is like super relevant to the company, then it could be helpful just to show that, yeah, I've actually been doing this for a while. I've actually got deep experience in it. But yeah, really the only thing, like I would say the last 5-10 years are really the only years that matter. I've been doing this for 25 and I don't pull out stuff that I did 25 years ago. We don't code that way anymore. And a lot of the jobs I did back then, I wouldn't want to do again anyway. So let your GitHub be your portfolio. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. Cool. You got education right up front. Learn to build server-side apps using Ruby, the Ruby on Rails framework. I would just say Ruby on Rails. I built applications using Ruby on Rails. Don't put the word framework in there. And SQL databases. Although SQL databases, you're kind of implying that you've used more than one SQL database, where I know Turing just does Postgres. So I would just list Postgres on here and not say SQL databases. Collaborate in groups on what? Grammar's not right. Via GitHub, capital G, capital H, to build up my portfolio. So grammar on this one's a little shaky. And experience working with professional dev tools, I would take this part off. I would just say collaborated on 4 group projects. Is it really only 4 group projects? I would just say like did group and pair projects, or just specify it was project-based learning. Project-based learning, portfolios on GitHub. So yeah, I think you could reword this last sentence here a little bit. Work experience, you got a lot of stuff on here. Boxing coach, doorman. You don't need to tell me this much information about your previous experience. I mean, boxing coach is cool. Doorman's cool, but I don't need 3 bullet points telling me what you did as a doorman. I think you could just get this down to like a real, like short 1-line, customer interaction, at lobby level of hotel or something like that. And just, keep this a lot simpler. This one you're getting into like cocktail bar and stuff like that. Well, actually, you're telling me about the place. This has nothing to do with your experience. So I would take this bullet point off completely. This has nothing to do with you. This is about the restaurant. So I would take that one off. Responsible for managing influx of clients, providing positive wait experience for often hour-long. Nobody cares about this. So again, you don't have to like oversell, this kind of stuff, because again, you're putting more emphasis on the business than your contribution. Ensure the safety of staff and staff of 3 and a capacity of clientele of 50. I would take off the capacity and just say ensured safety of 3 staff and up to 50 guests at a time, or something like that. I think you could reword that a little bit. But again, you don't have to give me so much information about, doorman, bouncer kind of role. Boxing coach, design-led weekly courses for fitness and boxing fundamentals. Officially licensed coach for USA Boxing. So, I mean, if you're going to go for like a sport-related kind of company and you want to be a developer for, a company that does stuff about sports, then I think some of this stuff is okay to talk about. But if the company doesn't do anything with boxing, they're not going to care about any of this, I promise. They'll kind of read through and go, okay, well, you did some fitness sessions and whatever, but they're not gonna like read like into this and go, oh wow, you've got like, experience working in boxing tournaments. It has nothing to do with their business. Like it's not going to matter to them. So I'm not saying it's not good experience. I'm just saying it's not relevant experience, and there's maybe other things that you could put on the resume instead. Volunteer work is good to have. Puppy raiser. Raise puppies to be future service dogs. Okay. So, yeah, I would lead with service dog training, or call yourself like a service dog, trainer or something like that. But otherwise, yeah, it's a good volunteer thing to have on there. Audio visual support. Documented a series of 5 multi-day seminars. Yeah, that's fine. And it did come through with a second blank page, but that's okay. Cool. So you've got. So these were projects. This wasn't your coursework. Coursework would be like, what classes did you actually take at Turing? And so I would actually I would label this as projects. For the backend certificate, it might be good to tell them when you're expected to graduate. Like you could say 7-month program, expected graduation of blah. The fact that you started a little over a year ago makes me think you probably repeated maybe 2 mods, which is fine, but you don't have to tell them that. You can just say, or you can even leave the 7-month program part off, but tell me when you're expected to graduate. And then I would probably reorganize your projects into, and I've talked about this on the stream before, give me a user empathy statement, like what does the user do with little Etsy shop? Users mimic an e-commerce interface, something along those lines. And I'm lagging really hard, so not sure if I'm lagging for everybody, but let me double check my network connection here at home real quick. And I'm going to steal all the bandwidths. Cool. Hopefully that'll be a little better. So yeah, so typically for a project, I would start with the user empathy statement of what does the user do with this application? Like, why did you build it for a user? And then from there, tell me what was like the main learning goal of the project? Like, what did you learn out of that project? And then if it was a group project, a solo project, or a pair project, like what part did you work on? So pair project and solo project, you did everything. But in a group project, was there a particular part that you focused on? And I would just mention that in a bullet point. And then the last bullet point is just tell me the tech stack. Making the tech stack kind of this mixed like caps kind of thing, or all caps, I would probably just make that a bullet point under there. But then also tell me whether it was a group project or a pair project, that sort of thing. It looks like you're actually linking to GitHub on these, which is fine. If you've got them hosted on Heroku, because you do mention Heroku, put the link to Heroku on there as well, so that I can actually experience it live. So I'd love to see, like, just tell me the name of the project, and then next to that, give me a link to GitHub and a link to Heroku, and then user empathy statement, something cool you learned about it, or if it was a group project, like what area did you work on it, and then tell me your tech stack, and just make that a couple of bullet points. And then do that for all 3 of these projects. You've actually got enough room down here at the bottom. You could probably get a 4th project down here. Cool. But otherwise, I mean, the layout's decent. I would probably reorganize some of the skills again. Like tell me the TDD library that you used. In this case, I could see RSpec over here, but like mention it over here too. Active record, there's no space in the name. So I can't tell if that was like the all caps thing or if there's supposed to be a space there, but active record's all one word. And so it looks like you've got both RSpec and mini tests. So I would list both of those over here in the skills. Cool. I think that's pretty much it. All right, so let's move on to the other one. So Trek Itch, here's yours. Let me zoom in on this one a little bit. Mobile, LinkedIn. So if you're actually giving me a phone number, you don't have to say, this is my phone number, and you don't have to say, this is my email address, because I know what a phone number and an email address look like, so you can drop those as headers. And then for LinkedIn, I would actually just put the full URL of like LinkedIn and a full URL for GitHub, and then you don't have to, again, you don't need the header on there. Just, oh, this is a LinkedIn URL. I bet it's your LinkedIn profile. And same thing with GitHub. So I'd try to get GitHub on there as well. Try to give yourself some kind of title underneath there too, like what kind of developer are you? Like full stack developer, back-end developer, front-end developer, like put some kind of title under your name as well. Don't say you're like a junior or a senior, just call yourself what you are. Let the company level you from there. Cool, just want to catch up on chat because I saw a whole bunch of stuff stream by. Groups of 4 people, cool. I wouldn't bank on GitHub for your portfolio. Yeah, not everybody's going to have everything on GitHub either. Some companies don't use GitHub. Some companies use like GitLab, or they'll use Bitbucket or something like that. It's still using Git, but it's not hosted on GitHub. But if you're going through school and you've got project work and you're like new in the industry, I think GitHub's a fine tool for a portfolio. Sounds like your work experience is sufficient to show your skills. The advice is more for beginners. Yeah. Same boat. I don't need to bank on my personal GitHub anymore. For work projects is sufficient enough. Yep. Now, at the same time, if you want to go learn like some new skill to get some different kind of job from what you've been doing, then a personal project is good to put on the resume just to show that you've got growth in a particular area, because most companies aren't going to hire you to learn something new. Like, oh, I really want to get into machine learning, but I've never done it before. Will you hire me? Probably not. But if I do some projects on the side to show that I've done something with machine learning, I'm more likely to at least get the interview. And then just taking a look through here, Hidden says, misunderstood your message. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and by the way, I love having perspectives and other ideas and stuff, and like this kind of discussion going on in chat. So I appreciate everybody like sharing their ideas and thoughts. Yeah, we're here to be respectful and help each other out. So, keep it friendly and keep it lighthearted. We're all just here to help. But I really do appreciate seeing all these other thoughts and perspectives coming through. So keep that up. And if you do have other questions, like drop it in there. And if I miss it, like drop it in again. If I see a GitHub link on a resume, I click on that before even reading the resume. Yeah. I mean, if I'm a hiring manager, I'm going to like scan the resume to go, do I even call this person? But then when I'm reading it like top to bottom right before I call them, I'm looking at all the things. I'm clicking on every link. I'm looking through your code. I'm looking through your LinkedIn. I'm looking at, things that you post on LinkedIn. I'm looking at people, that endorse you. Like, what skills have you been endorsed for? And then who are those people? Because if 50 classmates endorse you as being a Ruby developer and those are the only people that endorse you for Ruby, it's like, I don't trust that endorsement as much because you're all brand new at Ruby. But if you get like a couple of like mentors saying, yeah, they're actually good at Ruby and they've got experience, then I'm more likely to trust that kind of endorsement. That's my bias as an interviewer though. Cool. All right, let's get on to Trek Itch here. All right, so profile, positive, hardworking, detail-oriented developer seeking to apply my knowledge in programming, computer info systems, web-based tech, and infotech. This is pretty buzzworthy. I might change this up a little bit to just talk about like, so on my stream, you're always going to hear me say, customize this for whatever job you're going for. And so you're going to customize this a little bit for like what you bring to their team. They want everybody to be hardworking, so that doesn't tell them anything. So hardworking get taken off. Detail-oriented developer. Everybody on their team better be detail-oriented or we're all having problems, so that can be taken off. But tell me like what's sort of your, like what's in your wheelhouse, as we would say, like what's the core competency that you bring to the team? Like what are you really proficient at? Give me that in that statement at the top. Like on mine, for example, I talk about like I do high-level architecture for scalability and resilience, and I'm a trained public speaker, and I love to help mentor and coach others around me to grow. That would be a statement that I would put on my resume because that's what I'm bringing to the team, as opposed to like, oh yeah, I'm positive, I'm hardworking. It's like, you better be. I'm not going to hire you if you're not hardworking, but you don't have to tell me that. So yeah, I think honestly, a lot of this statement is not helpful on the resume. I would get rid of the whole thing. Intermediate knowledge of Java. I waffle a little bit, honestly, on whether this kind of statement is helpful on a resume. Just tell me the skills that you claim to know and let me determine what level that skill is, because this is also a very subjective thing. What you think is intermediate, I might think is junior, or what you think is junior, I might think is intermediate based on different levels of experience. And so I always tell people, don't level yourself on a resume. Let the company evaluate it and kind of put you in their own bucket and then go from there. That would be my initial impression there. It's kind of the same thing we saw resume last week where someone had like a bunch of like progress indicator dots on the resume. I'm like, get that off of there. Because saying that you're 4 out of 5 on JavaScript, meaningless to anybody. Like, you think you're 4 out of 5, but what does that scale even represent? So yeah, I would take that kind of stuff off. Just tell me the languages that you do know and so on. So on this language, or on this resume, I don't really see a lot on here where you're summarizing like, these are the languages I know, these are the frameworks, these are the kind of apps that I've done, aside from like Java, C#, and Visual Basic. Visual Basic's not really heavily used in our industry, so having VB on here, I don't know is really going to like win you any points. Not that it's a bad thing, because it shows that you've got other programming languages that you've learned, and you can kind of pick up, positive traits from lots of different programming languages. So I'm not saying it's bad and to take it off, but tell me a little bit more about what these kinds of experiences are. So you're showing me your education, and I can kind of dig into some of this in a minute, but like, when I'm a hiring manager looking at this, I want to see in a hurry, like, I'm looking for a person that's done Java with Spring and you've done such and such. Like, I want to see that in a hurry. I don't want to have to like hunt through this whole resume during the screening process just to find out if you've got the skill that I'm looking for in that job post. And so I would rebuild this skill block here a little bit to tell me a little bit more about the languages, the frameworks, libraries you've used, hosting platforms, if you've used any. If not, it's fine. Have you done any databases? Do you have Git experience? Do you have testing experience? Like, what other kinds of experience do you have as a developer? And list that stuff out here. Because right now, saying you've got project management and software development, it's like, well, yeah, you've already told me you're a software developer, so you don't have to reinforce here that you've got experience as a developer. Your whole resume is supposed to be telling me that you're a developer. Experience with web-based technologies, which ones? You don't tell me any, at least not yet. Digital media, like what kind? And what does digital media mean to you? So again, I would spell this stuff out in a lot more detail. Excellent internal, external communication skills. I would leave this off. Unless it's a role where you're going to be something like a developer advocate where you're creating actual content. Just saying that you've got communication skills, like, it's not going to help you on a resume. You can take that off. Bachelor of Business Admin, Computer Info Systems. Yep, this is all fine. All right, professional experience, level data, Kalamazoo, integration developer. Develop Groovy and YAML-based ETL integrations. All right, cool. So now we're getting into ETL. So I know you're working with databases. Put Groovy up top. Put YAML up top. Work with technical contacts at school districts to develop, test, and deploy integrations for their districts. Okay. I would, like, this is something that I'm going to dive into on that first phone screen that we have. What kind of deployments were you doing? What kind of testing were you doing? If you can tell me some of that ahead of time on the resume, that would be even better. You don't have to like tell me the whole story, but like, how did you deploy it? What kind of platform was it? Was it on premise? Was it cloud-based? What kind of hosting was it? Was it Docker? Was it containerized or not? Like, you can share more of that detail. Right now, this is too vague. I don't have a good enough picture yet of the depth of your skill. Develop PowerSchool API integrations. So I don't know what PowerSchool is, but the fact that you did API integration is a good skill. I know that you can go consume an API. So that's great. This is just kind of giving you like my stream of thought here while I'm kind of reading through and kind of what my initial impressions are. So I don't mean to sound critical or anything like that. This is just kind of my initial thoughts. Develop JavaScript. All right, well, you didn't tell me JavaScript up here. So why not? Do you not know JavaScript well enough to, list it up here? Because it's okay to have done a little bit of JavaScript and not be able to speak to it in an interview. But if you can speak to it in an interview, tell me up here in the skills block that you've got JavaScript experience. I don't have to like go hunt for it on the page. So JavaScript-based validation rules for more than 20 school districts. Okay. I would then ask on the phone screen, like, tell me more about these validation rules. Were they regex based? Were they, what were they validating and how did they work? How did you give the user feedback on the interface to say that something worked well or didn't work well? Spearheaded, I would do past tense, the process to define standard of validation rules. Okay. Worked with team of business analysts to define, update rules for acquisition of state funding, disability funding. Cool. All right. If you have any quantifiable data on like how much state funding, that would be good to see on here too. Acquisition of $10 million of state funding or something. Like, if you can throw a dollar amount in here, that'd be cool. If not, it's okay. Student Sync Developer maintained a VB-based customer-facing integration software for upwards of 250. So I would just say like I would take upwards of, and I would just say for 250 schools. If it's rounded off, that's fine. Both locally and internationally. Okay. Migrated customers integration through summer downtime. So tell me a little bit more about this migration. Like, was that part of the same kind of ETL work that you did? Or was it like, what were you actually migrating? What were you migrating from? What were you migrating to? I would want to see a little more information about that. Communicate with customers regularly to support and troubleshoot. Yep, that's fine to leave on here. Android development. Put that as a skill up top. You're a mobile developer. Even if it's only a little bit, you've got Android experience. Android Studio. Get that up top. Help students. So you knew it well enough to teach other people. That absolutely needs to be at the top of your resume. So yeah, get that stuff up there. Debugging. What kind of debugging did you do? And also with the Android Studio, was it Gradle or was it like the old style? Actually, 2017 it was probably Gradle. So like talk about some of that Android skill that you've got. Like get that up top in the skills block. You've got more space. You got this big chunk of empty space down here at the bottom. So you've got room to build up that skill block up top. So definitely get some more stuff up there. Educated students in basic intermediate concepts of object-oriented programming. Cool. Guided students in fundamentals of debugging. And version of software. Is it versioning of software? So you got to check your grammar on this because some of these statements don't make sense. If it's versioning, then that's fine. I might ask a little bit more about like, oh, what does versioning mean to you? How do you implement versioning? What are some pros and cons? And why do we version software? Stuff like that. Sales page, develop test cases for testing financial software. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about what that meant. Worked with Java programming to develop automated. So you could probably combine both of these two things together. So you develop test cases for testing financial software solutions using Java in automated tests. So I would probably say developed automated Java test cases for financial software solutions. It's all in one line. So I would probably combine that stuff a little bit more. Use database tools and SQL queries. So SQL. You didn't mention SQL up here. You also don't mention what database you've used. So it's a relational database, I'm guessing, because it's SQL queries. So was it MySQL? Was it Postgres? Was it SQL Server? Was it something else? So get that up top. If you've done enough database tooling and SQL to know like, oh, I had to, you've got to write SQL slightly differently for different kinds of databases, like mention that database up top. Worked with Agile methodologies. Agile's a capital A, but put Agile up top. If you've got Agile experience, get that up top too. Java programming, teaching assistant tutor. Cool. Help students develop Java programs. So you know Java well enough to teach other people. So that's great. Translated difficult programming concepts into understandable terms. Yep. Coach students in ways to improve skills. Yep. So this is all good teaching experience. So that tells me that you've got enough programming experience to like turn around, teach, and coach other people. So if you're looking for a job as a developer, like trying to think of like what level this would qualify you for. So you've got enough skill as of 5 years ago to teach other people. And you've been working off and on in different kinds of technologies over the last couple of years. I'd probably peg you as like a late intermediate, maybe early senior level. But again, let the company level you as far as that goes. But I would definitely build out this skills block. There's a whole lot more that I had to go through and really parse out of this resume to try to guess at things that you knew. You got to build up the skills block. You got to make it really easy for me to say, yes, I'm calling this person. I say this on the stream all the time. When I post a job, I'm getting hundreds of these resumes. And so when I'm screening through them, I'm looking for a reason to say, nope, because I got hundreds of these to get through. I want to call like 10 to 15 people maximum. And so you got to show me in a hurry the value you're bringing to my company. And right now, this top block up here doesn't tell me a lot about the value that you bring. I got to really hunt for it on the page. And if I got to look that closely to go like, does this person match up with my job post? I'm just going to like put it to the side and move on to the next one. It's just the reality of it. So you got to be really front and center. This is the value that I bring to you. these are the tools that I have. These are the programming languages I've got. This is the kind of applications I've been building. Like, put that right up top. And I think you'll probably get more traction on getting phone calls and so on. Cool. Yeah, you're welcome. Appreciate the thanks in the chat there. All right, let's dive back into chat here a little bit. Do we put full stack engineer, full stack developer? Yeah, that's a whole can of worms. In Canada, for example, you can't call yourself an engineer unless you've gone through an engineering program, you have an engineering degree, and you like sign up for some like engineering brotherhood kind of IEEE kind of regulated thing. Otherwise, you cannot call yourself an engineer. If I were to move to Canada, I would have to completely change my resume and take the word engineer off because I'm not allowed to call myself an engineer. In the States, though, they are pretty interchangeable. There are some people that are very, they hold very strong opinions on what engineering versus development means, where the engineers like more of the planning kind of it, and the developers like, like the actual execution of. So I don't personally hold a strong opinion either way. Personal projects are good. Say what it is, but don't explain it. RC Maniac says, personal projects are good. Say what it is, but don't explain it. Explain it in the interview. I think you need to explain some amount of it. And again, I think it comes back to just the user empathy statement, because it shows me then as a hiring manager that you're thinking about the user when you're building software. And this can really play into like things like accessibility and equality about like who was on your mind when you built this thing. Yes, we are the first users of our software, but we're not the end user of our software. So who are we building this for? What are they going to do with it? Tell me that as a statement. Like users can plan a road trip, thinking about the Turing backend program, getting into like sweater weather, if they're still doing that project of, users can plan a road trip and see temperature, when they arrive, or see like a temperature forecast when they're expected to arrive or something like that. Like that's a good user statement. That lets me know that I can plan a road trip and, you're pulling in weather data and so on. And so then the next bullet point is, using such and such map API and such weather API, and then tell me like, what was your role on the team? That kind of thing. That would be a good sort of project layout. But yeah, you don't have to tell me every little thing about it, but you are going to have to describe it at least a little bit just to pique my curiosity. So when I do get you on the phone, I can ask you about it. Yeah. Cold River says, coming from a background in boxing and only completing about 3/4 of my boot camp before starting the job search, I stay away from the word engineer. Fair enough. RC Maniac says, I leveled myself because I didn't want to make it to the final interview only for them to go, oh, you don't know X, but you had it on your resume. Well, if you have it on your resume, you need to be able to speak to it. But if they're looking for a certain amount of skill in a particular technology, this is where on the phone screen you can say, hey, I noticed on your job post, like, and this could be something that you ask the recruiter or the hiring manager, and just say, hey, in the job post I saw you're looking for somebody who had a certain number of years of experience and had experience in the following tool. Are you expecting that many years in that tool? Or are you just looking for that number of years total? And I happen to have some proficiency in that tool. They should be really straightforward about that. Because if they say we're looking for someone with 3 years experience in Ruby, well, or I'm looking for someone with 3 years of industry experience, and then I'm looking for someone that knows Ruby. Well, do I have to have used Ruby for 3 years, or do I just need 3 years of experience? Those are very different things. Because they might be flexible on the language. If you've got like 3 years of Python, picking up Ruby is going to be no big deal. So, I mean, it depends, but I would ask the company to clarify that if you can get them on the phone, or if you're doing company research and you're kind of networking with people, ask them like, hey, I saw this job post. Like, do you know anything about this? Like, what would I really need to do? Because I agree with what RC Maniac said in chat. You don't want to get all the way to the end of the interview and go, oh, you didn't have enough experience, and so we're not gonna go forward with you. They should know before you even get to that last interview that you didn't have that much experience. If they're interviewing you anyway and they get to the last round and then they realize that, then they are bad at interviewing. They should have found that out ahead of time. Like, they should have a very clear goal of exactly what they're looking for. And if they start interviewing you, it means they believe you have that skill, or that you have enough of that skill to progress into the interview process. If you get to the end and they reject you for not having enough experience, that's on them, not on you. They are bad at interviewing at that point. That's my 2 cents. Let's see what else we got on here. RC Maniac's going to make dinner. Make me some. I'm hungry. Heading to bed. X, good to see you. Hope your dragon makes it there in one piece. Stay warm up there. Trekitch. If I make changes, could I get a re-review? Absolutely. Yeah, send it back anytime. Happy to. And if you ever want a private review, when you upload a resume to me, you can ask for a private review. I do charge money for those just because it's more of a one-on-one coaching kind of thing. But I'll basically spend an hour with you and we'll be on like a Zoom call or something and we will go over absolutely every detail. But yeah, I'm happy to do that with folks anytime. Cool. What else is going on? We're up to 22 viewers. Wow. How do we get so many viewers? I'm not complaining, but I'm happy. Hello, everybody. I only see like 6 people chatting though. So what are the rest of you doing? You're just sitting back listening? Tell me hi. Where are you from? You on the job hunt? What can I help with? Cool. I'll go back to just the regular chat mode here. So yeah, I do resume reviews on the stream from time to time. We did a bunch last Thursday. We did a bunch the Thursday before that. The Thursday before that, I had an HR person come and we were just showing people like, this is how we screen things. This is how HR would screen it and then hand it off to me as an engineering manager and how I would screen it just to figure out like, do we even call you? And I think that was pretty eye-opening for a lot of folks. Yeah, like this is kind of the in-depth sort of resume review that I do. I did some last Thursday, did some tonight. Let's see what else we got going on. Trash Dev is just staring. How's the unpacking going, Trash Dev? You got everything all unpacked, all settled in? It takes a long time to unpack at a new place, especially if you're like moving into something as big as a house. It takes a while. I've still got boxes here. We've been living in this house. January is going to be 6 years we've been in this house. I've still got boxes I've never unpacked. They're just sitting on a shelf somewhere. I have a friend in Ottawa who he holds to a rule that if you don't open a box in 6 months, throw the box away. Like clearly you don't need anything in that box. Or if it was that important to you, you know, that's sentimental to you, you would have put it away by now or put it up on a shelf or something. But watching kids before bed, cool. Cool. All right, what else is going on, everybody? I'm gonna hydrate a little bit more here. So Trash Dev did a what was the thing you did on your stream the other day? It was like a Scrabble kind of game. It was like words. It's like Words with Friends, but it was like words on stream where like everybody got to interact. That was crazy fun. That was a lot of fun. I want to get something like that going on my stream just to make things a little more interactive. Benji Tib. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but do I call you Benji or Ben? But welcome to the stream. Good to have you. Thanks for the follow. I appreciate it. I'm Ian Douglas. I wrote this whole website, techinterview.guide, and I'm just here to help people out with my perspectives and thoughts on the tech interview process and career coaching and stuff like that. I've been in the industry for long time. And yeah, Trash Dev does some mentoring on his stream. He also does resume reviews from time to time. Just got a job working for one of the big FANG companies and moving out to the East Coast at some point, but staying put in Southern California for the time being. Yeah. But yeah, Trash Dev actually streams a lot more than I do. Trash tends to stream during the daytime. I've been saying for the last like month, it's like, oh yeah, I'm totally going to start streaming during the day, and then I never do. I don't know whether I will this week or not, because I don't know if I've got that job at Amazon yet. I hope I do. I really hope I get that job. It's going to be a great job. Great team. Like the folks that I chatted with are really, really fun. So I hope I get that job. But we'll see in a couple of days. Hopefully it'll work out. I will be sad if I don't get that job, because that means my job hunt starts over again. But I've got other stuff in the works. I got, where have I applied? Twitter's reviewing my profile for a developer advocate. I got applications in at Shopify and Square for developer relations. And I got one in at Microsoft that they haven't responded to yet, which is surprising. They're usually really quick to turn around to either tell me I'm not qualified or to, actually no, so far they've only ever told me I'm not qualified. We'll see how it goes. I did promise last stream I wasn't going to hydrate with soda anymore. Let me put this away. There we go. only water. I'm gonna crack open this cranberry and orange hint water. It's actually pretty good too. Yeah, I hope it works out. Like the idea of like you go learn enough to get a certification, and then you continue to learn other classes, get those certifications, and you get to teach those classes is like astounding to me. It's like I just have to go learn their content and then I can teach it myself. That's a pretty great deal. I mean, obviously being able to teach and keep a classroom engaged is a hard skill. It's not an easy thing, and being able to answer questions on the fly can be tricky. But I love doing it. I really do. Right now, all of their training is remote. They do hope that they're going to get into in-person training at some point, and I'm looking forward to like getting out of the house. So I've been cooped up here for like 2 years now. It's like I love my dog, I love my family, but I want to get out of the house. So we'll see. I think that's also why I wanted to get into developer relations. Like, can I please go to a tech conference like on someone else's dime? I don't want to like pay for it out of my own pocket. That's why I didn't pay for RubyConf, and I kind of wish I had, because there were a lot of cool people there that I would have loved to just hang out with and say hi. But to me, that wasn't worth $600 either. So, Trash says my buddy got a job at Figma for DevRel. Yeah, I saw that job post, and I thought about it, but I'm like, I don't really do like the design kind of stuff. But yeah, there's a really, really big DevRel community, developer relations community, and they've got like just a giant job board. They publish stuff all the time on Airtable, and you can go in and you can find like some really amazing jobs. And they do a pretty good job of like trying to share salary and location and remote and travel percentages and all that kind of stuff. So it's yeah, it's a really great community. They're really like willing to help each other out. So we'll see. If I don't get this job at Amazon, I'll probably keep applying for developer relations roles. I've got maybe a dozen companies that I'm kind of going through the research and kind of scoping out right now. So if I don't get the job at Amazon, I'm probably going to spend most of next week doing the research and networking on those jobs and then applying for those jobs. And then I probably won't get any interviews until January. And if those don't work out, I've got a handful of startups that are kind of knocking on my door that they would really, really like me to get involved. I just don't know that I want to start up. I was talking to someone last week, actually a couple of folks that they actually wanted me to interview with them, and actually turned them down and said, nah, I'm looking for something that's established. I'm not looking to get in a startup. I want to like just join an established team and just contribute. It's kind of where I want to be right now in my career. Not that I won't like ever join a startup ever again. I'm tired right now, and startups take a lot of energy, a lot of work, like more so than a regular kind of job. And so I'm looking for more of that kind of regular pace right now, at least for now. A couple of years from now, who knows? We'll see how that works out. But yeah, my big goal right now is I really want to get a whole bunch of like cloud certifications and stay really, really proficient at probably Python and JavaScript. And then I'm trying to think of what kind of backend language I would really want to focus on. So I've been doing a lot of Go, but I'm really curious about Rust. So I'm thinking I might get into Rust a little bit. Either way, I want to be an expert in 3 languages. So I'm going to focus on Python and JavaScript, and then some low-end compiled language, and just be really expert on those 3, and then get into more of an architect kind of role where I can like prototype stuff out. If I get into a startup, that'll position me as a CTO. If I join a company, that'll position me well as like architect principal kind of level. So we'll see. We'll see how that takes off in my career as we go. But I really want to get this job where I do the certifications. Either way, if I don't get that job, I've kind of decided I'm still going to go all in on certifications and just start getting certifications, and may actually get certifications in multiple cloud platforms just so I can better contrast like what they all offer as feature sets and how they contrast and stuff like that. Trash Dev is full stack, but the new job is front end. Yep, that'll be fun. Trash, how tempting is it in a big company like that to start introducing like Easter eggs on things, like just sneak a little something in the HTML, like Trash Dev was here or something in the HTML on those pages. Oogie says I'm considered full stack, but I'm way more comfortable in the back end. Yeah, same here. I consider myself full stack. I can get by in JavaScript. I've never used like React and Angular or like the front end frameworks, but like I can build a front end and I can add JavaScript to it and make it interactive. And I know enough CSS to like kind of panel things and make them responsive by hand. Although I prefer Bootstrap, but I'm way more comfortable on the back end building out APIs and services and that level of the architecture and like scaling out back end systems. I'm way more comfortable in that, way more experience in that for sure. It'll never pass code review, yeah, but all the time, yeah. I would totally be trying to sneak stuff in there. Cool. All right, well, been at this for, gosh, time flies. Been streaming almost 2 hours already. This is great. I love the kind of like night where I can just kind of kick back and chill and like, hey, you want to do a resume review? Sure, send me a resume. I'll do a review. Doesn't always have to have an agenda, right? It's good just to kind of kick back and do what we want to do and be what we want to be and have fun hanging out with each other. So, let's see what else is going on in chat. What else is even in chat? A lot of folks in chat. 3D print fan, another TV viewer. Austin for the win. Commander Root. Oh, new follower. Red Fox Running. Welcome to the stream. How's it going? Say hi to us in chat. Let us know where you're from. What are you up to? Appreciate all the follows tonight. It was great. And the subscribe from Cold River. Appreciate that. Always appreciate having new folks dropping by, see how I can help out. I actually audio recorded all of my Amazon interviews, so I'm going to kind of go back and listen to some of those, I think, throughout the day tomorrow. Because like I said, I think there were 2 questions, and I'm like, I wonder how that actually got perceived. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to listen specifically to those 2 things, because I think I did okay overall on the interview. I don't think that my answer to either of those like came across like so bad that I'm gonna get disqualified. Everybody else seemed to like be really engaged with what I do and what I had to say. And I always love when they get to the point of like, do you have any questions for me? And I ask them a question, they're like, "Ooh, good question." And the other thing I mentioned, the second guy that interviewed me, he was Canadian. He said, "Yeah, I was looking over your resume, looking over your background, see you do interview prep, so I'm expecting you're going to be pretty prepared." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm prepared. I'm ready to go." And at the end of it, he actually, and again, they're not supposed to give you feedback, but like, I think 3 or 4 of the 6 people that interviewed me made comments of like, "You did really well." And the second person that interviewed me said, "You were really well prepared." He goes, "But given the coaching you do, I wouldn't have expected any less." I'm like, all right, great. So it was fun that, they were checking out my background and saw that I do this kind of live stream to help people out. So Red Fox, good to see you in chat. Hello. Full stack from Canada. Well, now you got to tell me where you're from in Canada. I grew up in Canada. So where are you from in Canada? Yeah, I recorded them. So so Colorado is a first party or a single party state where if you are part of the conversation, you were allowed to record that conversation. And I like recording my interviews just so I can kind of go back and reflect on them. So yeah, I've got the 5 interviews recorded in audio format only, not screen, but I'm going to go back and just listen to them on fast and just kind of recap like how I think I did. I think I did well. Sometimes going back and listening to it a second time is cringy, but I mostly want to dial in on those 2 questions that I think I didn't do well, just to kind of reflect on like what I could have done better just in case. But near Edmonton, cool. So I grew up in Northwest Territories, and we used to drive down to Edmonton almost every summer, usually up the like northwest end if I remember right. West Edmonton Mall was our jam. There was also Gardner's Center, if that one's even still around. But yeah, we used to stop in like Peace River and get milkshakes on the way down to Edmonton. It's like 14-hour drive. It was ridiculous. We'd leave when it was still like crazy dark outside, and we'd get to Edmonton around like 9-10 o'clock at night. And yeah, it was always a good time. We used to hang out in the actually I remember West Edmonton Mall when they first built like the roller coasters and stuff inside, if that's still around. But yeah, and then moved out to Ontario from there for high school and college, and then moved to Ottawa for a couple of years as a firmware developer. Then I moved down to the States. I've been in the States for 21 and a half years now. But yeah, Edmonton's a great place. I miss Alberta. Alberta's a fun place to kind of see. It reminds me a lot of Colorado, where there's like a lot of mountains, but it's also kind of flat on the east side. Colorado's very much like that. But yeah, I miss Banff. I miss Banff probably the most, and Lake Louise, like just going up and seeing like Glacier National Park and stuff like that. That stuff's fantastic up in Alberta. My dad's family's all like interior BC, around like Castlegar kind of area, so like right in the Rocky Mountains. But yeah, it's beautiful up there. Missed that. You're up near Peace River last week. That's great. It's about as close to Northwest Territories as I've been. Yeah. Well, I grew up just across the border. So if you look at a map and see where Hay River was, and you go about an hour east of there, it used to be a town called Pine Point. It's not there anymore. They're talking about rebuilding it, maybe. It was a lead and zinc mine, and it shut down because it was too expensive to extract the lead and zinc ore. So they shut down the mine, which closed down the whole city, or the town. It was only like 1,000 people. And they basically like razed the whole town. Like everything's gone. Like they literally chopped all the buildings off at the ground level, filled in all the basements, and they literally moved all the buildings to other towns. So yeah, it was pretty wild to just see them like dismantle the town and all the infrastructure. But they're talking about rebuilding it just because lead and zinc is now worth more money. It's worth like opening the mine again, apparently. Interviewing for remote U.S. jobs. Cool. The stream's been great. I appreciate that. Yeah, let me know if I can help out at all. Also, let me drop my LinkedIn on here. If anybody ever wants to connect on LinkedIn, connect with me on LinkedIn. Don't just follow me. Connect with me on LinkedIn. If I can make introductions for folks, I'm happy to do that. Let me know how I can help you out with your job hunt. If there are companies that I know people, I will put you in touch with those people, because networking is absolutely going to get you a job faster than just blind applying to jobs. So yeah, if there are people that I can connect you to and introduce you to, I'm happy to do that. Trekit's gonna head out. Cool. Thanks for dropping the resume in. It was fun doing that on stream for you, and we'll catch you next time. Have a good night. But yeah, I love helping people make connections and do company research and stuff like that. So if there's any way I can help you out, let me know. Yeah, what else is going on with everybody? Trash is just kind of hanging out with the kiddos. Who else is still hanging out tonight? Nintendo Switch XL. Tony Zero, Tizzy Mac. I see a bunch of names here I've never seen before. Tech Dinosaur. That's me. Thought I was the Tech Dinosaur. Cool. It's awesome to see all these new names hanging out. Burgo Praz. Tony Zero. Spike Trap Claire. Cool. It's cool to see so many names in chat that I hadn't seen before. It's cool just having you hang out. But yeah, as always, if you've got questions, you can always whisper me on Twitch. Or if you connect with me on LinkedIn, send me messages on LinkedIn. And I will always ask those questions anonymously if you don't want to put them in chat, because they do, it does come up with your name and the chat's on the screen for everyone else to see. But if you want to ask a question without your name attached to it, you can whisper it to me. You can send it on LinkedIn or Twitter, and the same username on all those platforms. So just Ian Douglas 736. Connect with me. My DMs are always open on Twitter. And I will always keep like a queue of those questions going. And, when I sit down and do a Q&A, I'll say, here's a question that I got, and I won't say who it's from. So if you're not comfortable having your name public, but you want to ask a question, you can just whisper me on Twitch, or you can send it to me on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I will always keep it anonymous for you. Let's see what else. Just looking back at my Twitch whispers. Yeah, it's me. CSV sent me a message, said the dragon arrived in one piece. Someone else sent me a message that said it came in one piece and they took it out of the box, and their cat immediately started attacking it, thought it was a snake, which I thought was hilarious. Hitokiri, did I catch my question? No, I did not. Was it in, Hitokiri, was it in chat on Twitch that I missed, or did you send it to me on one of those other platforms that I just mentioned? Because I will go have a look right now if you sent me a message. Because I absolutely want to grab people's questions. Although now that I'm looking for it, if I say, hey, I got an anonymous question, they're going to know it was yours. But if there's something that I missed in chat, please drop it in chat again. And I apologize for missing it. I usually get really wrapped up in the resume reviews, and I try to catch back up on chat, but I sometimes miss things. Root user says, I've been finding web development repetitive and boring. Any advice? Changing to game development or mobile development? I mean, mobile development, depending on what you're doing in mobile development, can feel a lot like web development. It's a lot like MVC, where you're still kind of componentizing things and like calling fragments of code and partials and things like that. Game development can be fun, but it's a ridiculous industry to get into. It's hard to get into, and it pays really low wages. And so it's something to be careful about with game development. It's a very competitive industry. Everybody wants to get into game development. And if you don't take that job for low pay, somebody else will, because they really want to get into game development. My wife has a friend whose husband works on like major titles like God of War or something like that. But he was in the industry for like a decade before he even got like into really big titles. Hirokiri had asked back in chat, what are my top 3 books for Ruby on Rails junior to mid-level? Sandy Metz makes a really good book. I would have to go look up titles, honestly. But there's a book by Sandy Metz. See if I can find that title for you real quick. Practical object-oriented design in Ruby is probably one of the better ones. It's almost a decade old, but it's like one of those books that's almost timeless. So practical OOP or OOD in Ruby would be a good one. Also wrote 99 bottles of OOP. That's just going to be general object-oriented programming, not specific to Ruby necessarily. There's some other good Ruby books. If anybody else in chat knows Ruby books, drop them in chat for Hitokiri. Just trying to think of what other books I've seen. I mean, depending on what kind of work you want to do in Ruby, there are like design pattern books. I think I'm looking through a handful of titles that are like, oh yeah, I've read that one. That one's really good. None of them are popping up. Effective Ruby is good. Pragmatic Programmer is just kind of a good all-purpose kind of book. Rails Anti-Patterns can be a good one. I haven't read very much of that one though. But yeah, I mean, get something current. I mean, Rails 7 is an alpha now, so I mean, try to find something about Rails 6. Unless you're looking for like Ruby language specific. But if you want like Rails levels books, make sure you get something that's on Rails 6 at least, because that one's been out for a little bit. Otherwise, you're going to get into like really old stuff that's not going to be current anymore. Excuse me. Let's see what else we got here. Cool. Cold River had to help out. No problem. Yeah, they're very underpaid unless you're an animator. I mean, either that or unless you like invent some like wild new game mechanic, but then they're just going to quickly patent it and, you know, slap you on the back and say thank you. See. So from root user says, I may just tough it out then. I mean, you shouldn't have to feel like you tough it out. I mean, I would say like, what part of web development do you find repetitive and boring? Or like if you're in a job where you're just kind of doing the same old thing, then you might want to see if you can find a job where it's like a different industry where, you know, even if you're doing the same thing, you're doing it for a different purpose and a different kind of mission in life. Sometimes that can spark a bit of new interest. But it might also be worth investigating, like, are there other languages or frameworks that you can get into that'll kind of like reignite that passion for what got you into web development in the first place? Or is there some new angle on web development that you hadn't focused on, like you really want to get into like accessibility, or you really want to focus on like latency timings or scalability, and like focus on like a new area of development? So it's not specific to like, you know, full stack dev, but like you're doing more on the back end or more on the front end or something like that. See if you can find something just to kind of focus your attention for a little while, even if that focus is kind of fleeting and you're like, I'm going to try accessibility and I'm going to try scalability and I'm going to try like more like low level database stuff with indexing and like optimization, or you know, try a bunch of different things and see if something's like, oh yeah, maybe I want to try that for a little while. And if not, that's okay too. At least you've tried something. But to just sit there and go, I'm grumpy and I don't like what I do. If you don't change, you're going to keep doing it. So change. Like, what can you change? What, I guess a better question to ask is, what's in your power to change? Do you have opportunities to change any of that at your current job, or are you going to have to go get a whole new job in order to explore some of these things? If you have to change your job to explore something, then that can be risky, because if you change your job and then you find you don't like it, now you're in a new job you don't like. But if you can explore some of that while you're currently at your job and see whether your manager can make other opportunities available for you to go explore those other kinds of things. As a manager, I would always want to try to keep my staff as much as possible. And so if I can find an opportunity to keep you interested in the job, I should try to do that. If there's a possibility of like, maybe there's just a lateral move you can make and work on some other team, again, I should make that opportunity available so you don't leave the company completely, because you still have domain knowledge. But a good manager should try to keep the staff, and they should be asking you what you're interested in. And if you don't know, that's okay too. Start exploring though, because you don't want to just sit there and be bored and just feel like it's repetitive and that you feel like you want to get out of it. What are some other things that interest you? I mean, me personally, I'm interested in machine learning and AI, but I'm horrible at math, and so I'm probably not going to go down that route. But you know, I've got an experience in DevOps. I've never really tinkered with Docker or Kubernetes, so if I were going to explore something new, it might be that. Or I've been thinking a lot more about accessibility when it comes to content. Like, I've got these videos and they get transcribed on YouTube, and I can get captioning on there, and I extract a lot of the audio from these and I turn that into the podcast. But the podcast should also have transcription as well. So I was actually chatting with someone on Twitter today about transcribing podcasts. I could just go grab the transcription that YouTube makes and just like paste that into the podcast. Or is there another tool I can use to kind of automate some of that? I don't know. But from an accessibility point of view, sometimes people need to read the text. Sometimes people don't have the attention span for text, and so they want to like just listen to something, you know, so they can get up and pace or walk around, or, you know, go on a walk with their dog while they listen to it, whatever. So yeah, I'm trying to think of different ways of doing that with my own content. So those are areas that I want to kind of tap into and explore. But like, what do you think would reignite, you know, what you want to do? Mobile development's pretty fun. Depending on what kind of mobile development you want to do, like what kind of apps do you want to make with mobile? Is it more like a utility app? Do you want to get into like how the sensors work on the mobile phone? Do you want to get into like camera processing and image processing? Do you want to get into like location based stuff? There's a lot of stuff that you can explore in mobile development too, as opposed to just, you know, here's a panel and you tap something and it goes to another panel. Otherwise, that's going to feel just like web development, where you're just like, you know, I have a screen, and when I click a button, it goes to this other screen, and I click a button, it goes back, or it goes to somewhere else. Like, you can do that same thing in in mobile development, and it's not going to feel any different. You're coding it a little bit differently, but at the end of the day, it's MVC, and you're just building up your views, and you're kind of like attaching actions to them. And so if you're already feeling a little burned out on web development, that aspect of mobile development may not excite you. So it really comes down to like, what kind of product would excite you, and start exploring that. If you want to nerd out on that, you're welcome to contact me on LinkedIn. We can chat about it. I'm unemployed right now, so until I get a job, I'm happy to just hang out and chat with people. So yeah, I'd say root user, like, connect with me on LinkedIn if you want. And we can maybe chat on LinkedIn and see what else is going on. Let's see what else is going on. Rails 7 is now in RC status. Cool. Hopefully released before Christmas. I mean, it may be on Christmas. I mean, historically they've done a lot of Rails deployments, or Rails like versions on Christmas. That was kind of like their whole thing for the first several versions of Ruby. I wonder if Ruby 3 will be out then this Christmas, or if that's still kind of in the works. I don't know. Root user says in chat, from my observations from different job forums, why does DevOps get paid significantly more than a developer? I'm considering looking at DevOps. I'm certified with Microsoft Azure. Cool. DevOps is a whole new can of worms these days, especially with what's going on with like the Log4j or whatever it is, and like cloud deployments. And AWS had their big outage last week. Took down like half the internet. And then this whole logging library that's out right now. So DevOps is a whole new realm of taking care of the application and making sure it's deployable, it's accessible, it's resilient, highly available. And so it's a whole new realm of getting into like making an application available for users. Where do you host it? Do you host it in multiple places? Do you make it geographically closer to where your users are coming from? How do you even know where your users are coming from? How do you do things like load balancing for high availability or at least high response rate? And then how do you kind of manage things on the back end to be scalable as well? And so it can take you into kind of this whole new realm of architecture that I was kind of talking a little bit earlier before, where you've got like all these little Lego blocks of like, how are we going to piece this together to make this app like available for everybody? How do we keep certain aspects of it private, where maybe you've got to come in on a VPN or a certain IP range or something like that in order to access part of the application for administrative duties? Or is the admin part a completely separate application that we've deployed over here that you can't get to unless you're coming through our VPN? That it's not just part of the regular website, but you happen to log in as an admin, so it unlocks something for you. I've been in both of those kinds of scenarios. So on the DevOps side, it's a lot of how you deploy things, how you secure things, how you protect things, how you make them scalable, and that can be pretty fun too. You can get into a lot of cool automation with deploying those kinds of tools, especially with containerization and what we call orchestration for, we need to spin this up and down, and, we've got like a surge of traffic or something's going viral. So we got to like make, we got to spin up like 100 new copies of that thing. But it really comes down to a lot of capacity planning and money spend. So there can sometimes be a lot more like financial responsibility when it comes to that. Like, if you're hosting on premise, what kind of hardware do you have? When do you buy more hardware and now you're stuck with hardware? Or are you cloud based? And then who are you hosted with? Are you hosted on Azure? Are you hosted on other platforms? If you've got certification with Azure, I mean, you could go and look at like Azure DevOps and Azure architecture. That would be a really good one to start with to try to figure out like how do other companies like put these things together. That's actually the first certification I have to get if I get this AWS job, is I have to go be like a AWS architect. I forget the exact title of it, but it's like an architect associate certification, and it's all about how to architect full-blown apps with scalability and load balancing and resiliency, all that kind of stuff on the AWS infrastructure and all the different tools that you use to make that happen. And so you could do the same kind of thing if you've already started down the Azure route. Azure is going to have similar certifications that you can get for that kind of thing. And then take that to a company and say, hey, even if you're not on Azure, I've got this certification. So I understand how these different components are going to work and how they're going to communicate. So even if you are on AWS, I can still find something comparable and I still bring this to the company. And so it's not like you'd be starting new. Having the certification will definitely help get you started, but having like actual hands-on experience could be helpful. So if you can do like a project or something where you're deploying like little bits and pieces of something and actually getting it deployed on a cloud and say like, hey, go run this thing and it'll go deploy all this stuff for you, and show you that they're all communicating and so on, then that can be helpful. But you generally don't want to have like a long-running kind of Azure thing going yourself, because that's costing you money. And you don't want to spend money just to demo something on a resume to get a job. I don't really think that's worth it. If it's like a short-term thing where like I'm going to job hunt for 2 months, so I'm going to have this thing running for 2 months and I'm going to shut it down, that would be different. But don't just keep the thing running as like, hey, look at this thing I built. That wouldn't be worth it. Although Azure, I think they give you like 12 months of free credit too. So you might sign up for an Azure thing and just run it for a year. I don't know. Really depends on what you want to do with it from there. But DevOps means a lot of things to a lot of different kinds of companies too, as far as like where you get involved in that. Like some DevOps are more looking at how do we merge things and deploy things. Some of them are going to be more the infrastructure. Some of them are going to be more on the networking side of it. Some of them are going to be more on the security side. Some are going to be more on the database, data side. So it really depends on what the company thinks is DevOps. At SendGrid, for example, DevOps started out with like everybody does a little of everything from system administration and networking to database. And then we started hiring specific people, like my friend Sylvia that wrote this book, High Performance MySQL. She ended up being kind of the start of our DBA team within the company. And then like other people started focusing on just networking or just the system administration side. And so as the company grows, you're going to get more and more specific about what your role is, and less about like the generalist do a little bit of everything. So it may depend a little bit too for you, root user, as far as like what area of DevOps are you familiar with, and then how do you want to kind of grow that skill, and then you can kind of work at it from there, and or kind of like work backwards from there and try to figure out, okay, well, if this is the skill I have, this is where I want to get, what are the steps to get there? So very similar to what I was talking like right at the very beginning of the stream. I was mentoring somebody where it's like, this is the skill they have now, this is the goal, what do they need to do to get to that goal? Same kind of thing here. I think if you can analyze like what are you interested in, and then what skills do you need to get that job, and then go learn those skills. It takes time, and that stinks if you're in a job that you don't enjoy. But if you know that there's kind of that light at the end of the tunnel of like, hey, I'm just going to put in my time, I'm going to put in my 100% effort, I'm going to give it what I can, but this isn't what I want to do long term. I want to focus on this other stuff, and so I'm going to go learn this other stuff on the side, and then when I'm ready, I'll make a change. But I think it's worthwhile as well. Like, talk to your manager, talk to your team lead, and say like, hey, I really want to learn this. Like my next job, I really want to go get a job doing something like this, or my next position, I want to do something like this. Is that an opportunity that the company could make available to like start letting me shadow people in that area of the organization? If your company currently does DevOps, see if you can go shadow some of those folks for a week or two, or like one day a week, and just say, hey, can I shadow what you do? Can you teach me a little bit about what you do, to see if you even like it? You might look at it and go, this sucks. Like, I don't want to do this. Or maybe it's just the way they do it that you don't want to do it, but you'll at least get some exposure to it, and then say like, oh yeah, you know what? I really like this aspect of it, or I really like this part, or I didn't like this part. In worst case, you'll learn a little bit about it, and you're going to come back and you're going to be a better developer anyway, because you're going to have more sort of high level knowledge about how all these systems are deployed and how they work, and how your code is going to impact what they do in their job. So, I mean, either way, there's going to be some knowledge transfer going on. But yeah, see if there's opportunity available. And if there's no opportunity internally, then start working on something on the side and see if that can help you out, to sort of do that learning and that growth. And then when you feel you're ready, start applying for those other jobs. Let's see what else we got going on here. Cold River says, got hired to do DevOps team for an SRE role, hoping to learn a lot about it. Yeah. SRE is kind of the, it's what we call site reliability engineer. And so they tend to deal with a lot of the high availability and the resilience of keep that system online. I was applying for an SRE role at Google back in the day. And it was all about like, keep Gmail running or keep YouTube running like all the time. It has to be there 100% of the time, all the time. And the way that particular team worked, and I forget which tool it actually was that we would have worked on, but it was basically however many people there were on the team, you were on call 1 week of that many weeks. So if there were 8 people on the team, you were on call for 1 week every 8 weeks. And you were the point person. If anything ever happened, you were the person that got woken up, and you took care of it. And then the rest of the weeks, you figure out how to automate and write tooling so that when you are on call, your life is easier. I'm like, that's kind of a cool job too. Like, do on-call stuff for 1 week, and then the rest of the time you just figure out how to write software and do things to make that 1 week easier for yourself and make the whole team better. Like, that was kind of a cool gig too. But they wanted me to work in an area of LA that I didn't want to drive to anymore. So I actually closed down the interview process at that point. Oh well. Cool. Well, I've been going for a little over 2 hours. And I can already tell my voice is getting a little raspy, so I think I might call it. Yeah, I'll be around throughout the day tomorrow. I'm doing some mock interviews for a code school during the day for a couple of hours, but aside from that, I'm going to be around. So if folks have questions that you want to like chat with me about, or if you want like my thoughts and opinions on job hunt kind of thing, you can absolutely connect with me on LinkedIn, Twitter, same username on all those platforms. So just Ian Douglas 736. Connect with me. Let me know you're around if you want help on stuff. If you just want an opinion on something, you can tweet at me if you want. You can tweet about the live stream too. I'd appreciate getting more people in here asking questions. I loved just seeing like the different sort of feedback that folks had, like hidden, dropping kind of their perspective in there, and Trash Dev's usually in there, like giving some thoughts. I really appreciate that. That's what community is all about. So I'm just one voice in the community, and if I can facilitate other people having a voice, like, I'm happy to do that. So keep the chat going. Appreciate it. Aside from that, I think I'll wrap up. Who else is streaming tonight? Loyal Moses is around. So Loyal Moses is doing 3D printing for like a Christmas giveaway. We're all 3D printing little toys and sending them to him, and then he's packaging them up and giving them away for free to families that are requesting them. So he's going through the process right now of like packaging all these things up to like ship out over the next couple of days so they arrive in time for Christmas. But he's literally shipping them around the world from what I understand. So he's usually doing like 3D printed stuff and giveaways like filament, and occasionally he'll actually give away a printer. But I think tonight he said his stream was just going to be like just packing stuff up. But Where is X is online. I think we'll go stream her again. She's usually doing Advent of Code. Let's see what's going on. I think maybe Advent of Code. She's doing some TypeScript. I think we'll go raid her. So let me get that set up, and then yeah, we'll see you all on Thursday. I'm really, really tempted. If I get this job at Amazon, I'm really tempted to live stream the negotiation, but I don't think Amazon's going to go for that. So I will probably live stream one way or the other. If I get the job or not, I'll probably just live stream, and you'll either see me like drinking whiskey or drinking champagne. I haven't decided yet, or maybe both. Either way, I don't know. I hope I get that job. Anyway, set up the raid. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks again for participating in chat, and we'll catch you on Thursday. Incoming raid. See you, folks.